The moment I found my wife's secret phone, my world exploded. Anita, my partner for 13 years, was having an affair with her boss, Wesley. The shock was just the beginning. She planned to drain our bank accounts and kidnap our son. Driven by fury, I cut off her access and prepared for battle. When Wesley's thugs broke into my home, I faced them down with a starter pistol, uncovering a conspiracy that went deeper than I ever imagined. This is my journey through betrayal, revenge, and the relentless fight to protect my family. Brace yourself for a story you won't believe. What's worse than having diarrhea so bad you can barely get out of bed? Not being able to find the TV remote while you have such bad diarrhea. And what's even worse than that? Having diarrhea so bad you can hardly move and no TV remote, while your wife of 13 years leaves the TV on with some crazy morning talk show. As I lay in bed, too tired to change the channel to Sports Center, the talk show host was praising some author with a new book. The two women did the hug and kiss thing, which always reminded me of boxers shaking hands before a fight. The author then started talking about her book, just 16 days after my youngest son's 3rd birthday. I left my Brooklyn home with one suitcase. I was leaving my family, 2 sons, ages 5 and 3, and my husband, my partner for 20 years. I had received a grant to live in Japan for 6 months to interview survivors of the atomic bomb. My husband encouraged me to apply, and we agreed I should go. "How exciting for you," the TV host exclaimed. "You would think," the author continued. But while I was in Japan, my husband would call, saying the kids had been sick all night and asking if pillows were washable. I didn't like that. It was very unpleasant. Then I found I liked being on my own, just me, being my own person, not labeled someone's wife or mother. I had thought motherhood would completely take over my life, and now I saw it was true. What started as a research trip turned into a journey of self-discovery that led me to end my 20-year marriage. "Wow, that was so brave of you to finally act on your true feelings," the host said. "Everyone has their own choices, but my choice works for me," the author sighed. "I think it's not selfish for women to say, okay, I want to have my own priority. I want to have something in my life. I want to be able to do my job," she said. "I've had many women write to me saying thank you for sharing your story. They may not have the same story, but they've struggled." The host nodded like a bobblehead and said, "Women feel pressured to get married and have children because that's what they're supposed to do. I feel bad for you because you obviously felt that pressure. Maybe you thought it would be different than it was. At least you had the courage to leave instead of being miserable and dragging your family into misery. If I hadn't felt sick from diarrhea, this TV talk would have made me vomit. When the kids visited me, it was a disaster," the author continued. "I had no idea what to do with these energetic little ones. Even feeding them and finding them a bathroom was a challenge. After just 4 months on my own, I realized I no longer wanted to be a full-time mom." The host took the author's hand. "That must have been a very hard decision for you." The camera zoomed in as the author said, "A male full-time caretaker is a saint, but a female full-time caretaker is just another mother. We don't question it. We insist on it. We punish the idea that there are other ways to be a mother. By not being there all the time, I believe I'm a better mother now." "Our audience has some questions," the host said as the camera showed a young woman with a mic. "I love your book," the woman began. "I have 2 children, ages 4 and 7. I've been offered a medical residency in another state. This means being away from my family for a year. What should I do?" "I can't decide for you," the author began. "But why not go for it? See it as a win-win situation. You get a year to be yourself and decide if you want the full family life. If so, you can go back home. If not, you advance in your career without kids and a husband holding you back." "Yes," the host added. "You can always go back to your family if you change your mind. Years later, what's hubby going to do? Turn down your return? A divorced dad with 2 kids isn't a babe magnet. You, on the other hand, will be a young, successful, single medical professional with many future prospects." That was it. I couldn't take this noise anymore. Summoning all my strength, I got out of bed, changing the channel to Sports Center. A few days later, my wife, Anita, and I were washing dishes after dinner. Our son, AJ, was in the living room doing his homework. I started teasing Anita about leaving me without the TV remote when I was sick in bed earlier in the week, complaining about the talk show and author I had to endure. "Oh, she's my favorite author," Anita blurted out, surprising me. "I really enjoy her books. She's so brave and bold." "Anita, please tell me you didn't pay money for that nonsense," I said. "Darren, it's not nonsense. The first time I read her book, I checked it out from the library. I loved it so much that I went to her book signing and bought a copy for her to sign," Anita explained. When I made a face, she added, "I used the gift card your mother gave me for Christmas." "Geez, Anita, wanting to meet an author because you like their work is like wanting to meet a duck because you like bread," I joked. Anita laughed with that high musical tone I loved. I put away the last dish and said, "Okay, Anita, for the slower ones among us, can you explain what you found so fearless about a mother walking out on her 2 young children and a 20-year marriage?" "Darren, you have to read the book to understand. She had to leave to be a better mother. Now, when she spends time with her children, she gives them her full attention, no phone calls or texts," Anita said. "Wow, Anita, she sounds like a real mother of the year," I said sarcastically. "It's like someone adopting kittens, realizing they're a lot of work and dropping them at a shelter. Putting someone like that on TV is like featuring someone who raises dogs to fight." Anita playfully slapped me with the dish towel. "Forget about that part, Darren. I loved the part about her traveling the world and meeting different people. You know, what we planned to do before." Anita trailed off, pointing to AJ in the living room. Anita and I were high school sweethearts. We got married when I got her pregnant during my first and only Navy hitch. Our son was a blessing. We saved money to travel the world for a year, showing AJ the world and enjoying our time together as a family. But when AJ was 4, he was diagnosed with cancer. Our lives became a whirlwind of tests, treatments, hospitals, and specialists. My small company's insurance was terrible. The medical bills nearly broke us. We sold everything valuable, begged or borrowed money, and I took second and third jobs to pay for top specialists. One of my weekend jobs was cleaning grease traps, which was the worst. I never seemed to get rid of the smell, but it got me waste oil, which I converted to biodiesel, saving us money on fuel for our old Volkswagen Jetta. We sold Anita's car and my truck to help pay for AJ's treatment. He beat cancer, then relapsed, adding to our misery. Anita's parents passed away, and being an only child, this was hard for her. We gave up our home and moved into my mom's house. More treatments, more chemo, and more bills. Then the miracle happened. AJ defeated the cancer cells. He had been cancer-free for over 3 years. Now 10, AJ was a typical preteen boy. I became Mr. Dad, the scoutmaster, school parent, and coach for every team AJ joined. I didn't want to miss a minute with my son. I wasn't a great athlete, but as the saying goes, those who can, do. Those who can't, coach. When Mom retired to Florida, Anita got a job, so we had a more normal life. We were chipping away at our debt, but still saving a bit. I hugged Anita around the waist and kissed her neck. "Anita, we've been through a lot, but we need to be patient. We'll get there. It just takes a little more time. Let's get this debt down some more before we head off to Bora Bora." Anita gave me a sad smile. "I know, Darren, it's just hard. I don't want us to end up like my parents, always planning but never going anywhere. They died with a box full of travel brochures, living off postcards from others." We had this conversation many times, so I tried to lighten the mood. "Anita, most people travel to faraway places to be fascinated by things they ignore at home." This always made her laugh, but not this time. I tried a more serious note. "You know I want to see the world beyond his laptop, but we'll do this as a family." "Okay, Darren," Anita said, giving me a kiss. The older lady sitting across my kitchen table had just shattered my world. She was the wife of Wesley Stanford, one of the 3 partners at the real estate law firm where Anita worked. Originally a small company, they had expanded rapidly during the housing boom, adding staff and offices. They even moved into home inspections, insurance, and household repairs. Anita had gone from a part-time temp to a full-time assistant in less than 2 years. 6 months ago, Anita came home excited, announcing she was chosen to help with a seminar by her firm. Anita would travel to the capital to assist her boss, Wesley, who was speaking about new ways to get mortgages for buyers who wouldn't normally qualify. Our state capital wasn't Paris or London, but to a small-town girl like Anita, it might as well have been. For the past half year, at least once a month, Anita accompanied Wesley to conferences around the state. Wesley was in high demand for new mortgage ideas. Anita said it gave the firm great exposure to new clients. Apparently, that wasn't all Anita had been exposing. On the table were copies of 4 hotel registration sheets, each in Anita's handwriting. They read, Mr. and Mrs. Wesley Stanford. Surely there is some explanation, I asked the lady in front of me. Maybe they were suites with several bedrooms, that kind of thing. I was grasping at straws. She looked at me and sighed. I'm sorry to bring bad news, but these are single rooms with 1 bed. Wesley is too cheap to pay for anything nicer since he'd have to explain the extra cost to the firm. As you can see, Wesley even skimped on the hotels. These barely meet a day's ratings. I was still grasping at straws. Are you sure it was Anita? She took a deep breath. Darren, you seem like a nice man with a fine family. I just thought you should know what your wife has been doing with Wesley on these trips. I looked over the papers again as she continued. As for me, I've already been through this with Wesley when he turned 40. Back then, it was hair plugs, a flashy car, and cheating with the secretary. When I caught him, he agreed to a postnuptial agreement. It leaves him with nothing if he cheats again. I'm 63 years old and have no intention of going through that again or staying with his lies. She stopped to look at me. Darren, I only have proof of Wesley with your wife for the past 4 trips. There are also photos I can show you. Nothing graphic, just kissing and hugging. But if you want to save your marriage, I wouldn't look at them. She got up, collecting her purse to leave. I'm serving papers on Wesley as soon as he gets home today. It's up to you if you want to repair or end your marriage. She put her hand on my shoulder. I wish you the best of luck with your decision. I walked her to the door, then slumped back into a chair at the kitchen table. I was still there hours later when Anita walked in, wheeling her luggage and holding a laptop bag. Thank God I had been at my brother's for the weekend. My brother's twins were homeschooled like AJ and were his age. AJ thought spending time at his cousin's house playing video games and watching DVDs was the best. Hi, Anita said, breezing in and giving me a quick kiss. What are you doing sitting at the table? I ignored her question and asked in a monotone voice, How was your trip? Same old, Anita said, opening the refrigerator. Interest rates this, deductions that. How about the hotel? How was the room? I asked. About the same, Anita said, sitting down with a soda. Nothing special. Why do you ask? Must have been something special in the room. What kind of beds? I inquired. Anita gave me a look. Well, I don't remember. Maybe a couple of double beds, I guess. What kind of question is that? Must have been crowded in one bed for you and Wesley. Or did you only use one bed for certain activities and the other to sleep in after? I asked. Darren, his name is Wesley. What are you talking about? Anita said, a look flashing through her eyes. Nothing is going on. This was a seminar, for God's sake. I go on them about once a month. You know that. You agreed to it. Stop being dense. How long have you been involved with Wesley? I asked, pushing the hotel forms across the table at Anita. Or should I call you Mrs. Wesley Stanford? Anita picked up the hotel papers, leafing through them one at a time. She pulled a cell phone from her purse and pressed a speed dial. Turning away from me, she spoke into the phone. Wesley? Yes, it's me. It's about Darren. He knows... What? She did what? Served you right there? After another pause, she said, Okay, I guess we have to do it now. I'll be waiting for you. Anita closed her phone and turned to face me. Darren, it wasn't supposed to be like this. I wanted more time to prepare you. I just didn't have my exit strategy fully planned out. Looks like I'll have to go with what I've got now. I was still in shock as Anita retrieved her suitcase. It's not your fault, Darren. I love you, but I'm just not in love with you anymore. I need to get away and go places. You'll see. It will be better this way. I can give AJ more time and attention as a part-time mother than I can now. I was surprised I could speak. Anita, you can rationalize it any way you want. You're abandoning your son and family for a man old enough to be AJ's grandfather. Does the Viagra make Wesley that good in bed? Anita flinched. Don't go there, Darren. It's not about sex. Those times never took away from you or AJ. I only started sleeping with Wesley a few times at the last few seminars. It just seemed like the thing to do, you know, for all the places he was taking me. Anita, are you saying you sold yourself out for frequent flyer miles? Anita waved her hand at me. I don't want to talk about that, Darren. Just know that I will be there for you and AJ whenever I can. You intend to be a part-time wife too? Anita bit her lip and looked at her watch. Darren, we can still be friends. We've been together for almost 12 years. That should count for something. Judas was one of Jesus' first and longest apostles. Did his seniority matter in that betrayal? Just then, Anita's cell phone chimed with a text message. She looked down, grasped her luggage handle, and rolled it to the door. I saw a white Lexus pull up to the curb as Anita opened the front door. She turned to me. Darren, it's time for me now. This is something I need to do. We'll always have our memories. I'll send you postcards. I called my brother and explained what was going on. He instantly agreed to keep AJ for the day. I spent the rest of the weekend in a stupor. I called in sick on Monday to make plans. I tried to figure out what to do. Cancel credit cards, get money from the bank, contact a divorce attorney. But I was frozen in place. My world was upside down and I had lost all balance. The front doorbell interrupted my thoughts. I almost welcomed the break from my contemplations. Looking through the peephole, I saw my wife's boss, Wesley, on the porch with 2 other guys. Jesus Christ, I muttered, just when I thought things couldn't get worse. Hold on a second, I yelled through the door. I needed a minute to get my act together. I had no idea why this guy was on my porch, but I wanted to be prepared. It took more than a second, but finally I felt somewhat ready. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. Wesley stood there, flanked by 2 large men. A panel van with a liftgate was parked at the curb, and a white Lexus was in the driveway. Wesley looked like the successful lawyer he was, in a suit, with his salt and pepper hair perfectly in place. His companions looked like gym regulars, both huge with bulging muscles. One wore a t-shirt from a weightlifting establishment. Darren, Wesley began, I have come to remove your wife's personal belongings from the house. He held up a sheet of paper and tried to hand me a folder. I made no move to accept the documents, which seemed to irritate Wesley. Look, Darren, let's try to make this as painless as possible. I brought some movers from the office. Anita gave us a detailed list, so we'll be in and out quickly. Wesley motioned to the 2 men who began to move forward. I put up my hand to stop them and addressed Wesley. Listen, Wes, I said, purposely using the nickname I knew he hated. This is my house, and I'm not giving you or your buddies permission to enter or take anything. Wesley looked annoyed and pulled out a paper from the folder, holding up an official-looking form with a seal at the bottom. This is a notarized document from Anita that allows us to remove her belongings. Now please step aside so my movers can do their job. Your name isn't on the house deed in this state, but a man's home is still his castle. I saw that Wes and his guys were not leaving. So I'm asking you to take your hired muscle and get off this property before the police arrive. Wesley just smirked. Darren, I'm an officer of the court. I'm telling you to move before I have you arrested. I figured Wesley was bluffing, so I held my ground. Wes, you're just a real estate lawyer, not a law enforcement officer. Unless I see a cop with a warrant, you and your muscleheads can leave. I'm not letting you in this house. I'm asking you to go. The bigger of the 2 guys, a bald-headed hulk, spoke up. Look, pal, just get out of the way. I don't have time for this nonsense. Move before I make you regret it. I tried to look amused as I addressed Wesley. You better get your Conan the Barbarian clones home. They seem to be getting cranky. This pissed off Baldy, who shoved me backward with his massive arm. I stumbled from the porch, ending up against the wall inside the foyer. As I regained my balance, Baldy was in my face with his companion and Wesley right behind him. Mustering more courage than I felt, I yelled, All of you, get out of my house! Baldy just chuckled. I've had enough of your crap, pal. With that, he grabbed my throat. I'm just going to make sure you stay quiet until we leave. He looked over his shoulder at his buddy. Going to be a light workout. Several thoughts went through my mind, but mostly I didn't want to pass out from lack of oxygen. Baldy had a longer reach, and I could only flail at his arm. Then he pulled me closer, getting a better grip. Where's the tough talk now, pal? He hissed. In a movement even I found surprising, I pulled a gun from my waistband and placed the barrel against Baldy's ear. I pulled the trigger 3 times in quick succession. Firing a pistol in a small room is loud. The gunshots echoed off the walls and both my ears rang. Several things happened almost at once. Baldy released me, falling to the ground, screaming and holding his head. His companion froze. then backed up against the door jamb with his hands raised, shouting, "Don't shoot, man! Don't shoot!" Wesley ran out the door so fast I barely saw him, just papers fluttering in his wake. His Lexus tore across the lawn, jumped the curb, and sped down the street. Baldy was still rolling around, yelling and holding his head. A stain grew at his crotch, and the foul smell competed with the gunpowder. I barked at the other guy, "Get down on the ground, face first, hands behind your head." To my surprise, he complied. The gunshot echoes faded, and Baldy's screams turned to moans. I reached into my shirt pocket, retrieving my cell phone. A tinny voice came from the speaker. "Sir, can you answer me? Sir, are you still on the line?" It was the 911 operator I had called before answering the door. "Squad cars are on the way. Sir, are you there? Please answer me." Hearing the voice on the phone, Baldy's buddy on the ground started yelling, "Send help! This dude is crazy! He's got a gun! He's going to kill us all!" Just then, my son, AJ, appeared at the top of the steps. "Dad, what the heck happened?" His eyes were wide, taking in the scene of his dad holding a gun on two men. "Hey, go outside and wait for the police!" My boy seemed frozen in place. "AJ," I said sharply to snap him out of his stupor, "move now! Be careful not to knock over the video camera on the stair landing." AJ cautiously made his way down the stairs, avoiding the video camera that was still recording. He threaded his way past the two weightlifters before darting out the door. As you can guess, it was tense when the police showed up. Baldy was taken to the hospital while both Baldy's buddy and I were cuffed and placed in separate squad cars until things got sorted out. I endured a short but uncomfortable time sitting in the squad car before a grinning policewoman pulled me out and removed the handcuffs. As I rubbed my wrist, her partner held up an evidence bag with my gun in it. They both laughed. Then she said, "You shot one guy and held down another with a starter pistol full of blanks?" I shrugged. My wife, Anita, never allowed real guns in the house after AJ was born. I'm a volunteer coach for my kids' track team. I used what was available. Now that the drama was over, my adrenaline rush was gone, and I had to concentrate not to shake. Addressing the female cop, I asked, "When can I get that starter pistol back? Our team has a track meet on Saturday." They couldn't stop laughing. What a set of balls. That big guy could have crushed you like an eggshell, but after that blown-out eardrum, his ear is only good for hanging eyeglasses. "What happened to their boss, Wesley?" I inquired. "Mr. Big," the older cop replied with sarcasm. "He headed straight to the police station from here. He has a very different version of events than what our 911 operator heard. Wesley tried to spin some story about you forcing everyone into the house at gunpoint and trying to shoot them. Anita backed him up, saying you were a jealous, jilted husband who had gone berserk." The detectives let Wesley and Anita talk for a while, and even got Wesley to sign a statement on his version of events. I would have loved to be there when the detective played back the 911 recordings, and he hadn't even seen the video recording yet. As they say, the camera doesn't lie, but I was keeping that to myself for now. Wesley invoked his right to remain silent after hearing the 911 recording. Anita hurried off to get legal help and bail money. As for me, I filed a temporary restraining order, TRO, against Wesley and Anita that same day with the help of the Metro PD. The TRO was only good for 5 days until the hearing, but it gave me some breathing room and a chance to think. So you can imagine my surprise when I saw Wesley's Lexus parked in my driveway 2 days later. I didn't know what to expect, but seeing Anita sitting at the kitchen table drinking wine was not one of my top 10 guesses. "What are you doing here, Anita?" I asked. "It's still my house too," Anita said, motioning me to sit in a chair across from her. I kept standing. "You shouldn't be here, Anita. Didn't you get the TRO?" Anita waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, don't be such a stubborn mule. If the judge's youngest boy wasn't on the same track team as AJ, you never would have gotten that bogus restraining order." "Anita, you were free to make that argument at the hearing on Thursday. The judge felt that you, through your lover boy, Wes, were a threat to my safety. So please leave." "His name is Wesley. Hear me, Darren. Wesley." Anita was not in a good mood. "Did you really have to get him arrested? That was just spiteful. Do you know what kind of people are in jail? He was there overnight. It was a real ordeal for Wesley." If this wasn't so tragic, I would have laughed out loud. "Gee, Anita, I'm extremely sorry. Did he not play nice with the other crooks?" Did Wes forget to keep his back to the wall, or did he drop the soap in the shower and have a run-in with some hardened criminals? This is not funny, Darren. Wesley could be disbarred. Anita took a drink, then seemed to calm herself before continuing. Listen, Darren, this has gone way too far. Do you think you hurt me by draining the accounts and canceling the credit cards? She shook her head. It was petty of you to have my cell phone turned off. Any judge will make you give it all back or force you to sell the house so I can get my fair share. Anita leaned forward on the table. Let's end this now and move on with our lives. Wesley has agreed to pay for the divorce and handle the paperwork. That way we don't have to involve any other lawyers. You can keep the house and I'll take what's in the savings plus half of your $401K. Agree to this so we can file under irreconcilable differences. You can have primary care of AJ. We'll share joint custody, but I won't pay child support. You'll only need to contribute limited alimony. I glanced at my watch before answering. Fair share? Right, Anita. I hope you don't think I'm as dumb as I look. For starters, alimony is like buying oats for a dead horse. It's just not going to happen. You make a decent salary. Plus, whatever you get for having Viagra-infused sex with Wes. Anita made a face, but I continued. I didn't drain the savings accounts. Remember the prepaid college plan we enrolled in when AJ was born? I paid it off in full. Darren, Anita sputtered, you had no right to do that. That money was half mine. I had travel plans for my portion. I leaned back in the chair. Your signature is on the original contract with all the terms and conditions. I took the upgrade clause, opting for the full dorm package with health insurance and books included. After all, he's your son too, Anita said, taking another drink. Well, Darren, we'll see what a judge says about that. I tried not to smile. Courts care about the best interests of the child, Anita. What do you think a judge will decide is best for AJ? Jazz education on one hand, or you flying business class with your lover on the other? Anita looked around the room, confused. So, are you willing to sell your boyhood home or give up your $401K? Makes no difference to me. But after 12 years, I'm not walking away empty-handed. I took a breath before replying. Empty-handed? Right, Anita. I can't stop you from leaving me to chase your dreams. But you're not going to travel the world on my money. If you think AJ's welfare interferes with your plans, that's too bad. You can walk away, run away, or hopscotch away because my $401K is already gone. I used it to pay back some of the money Mom loaned us for AJ's medical bills. Funny how you're not mentioning the debt we owe. Darren, if you want the house, you should take on the debt. If I want the house? Anita, you know this house isn't really ours, don't you? Anita's eyes narrowed. What are you trying to pull, Darren? Your mom gave us that money for AJ's bills. She also gave us the house to live in when she moved to Florida. That makes it joint property. I walked over to a drawer and pulled out some papers, throwing them on the kitchen table. Anita, my mom didn't have a sugar daddy like you. She took out a second mortgage on the house to get money for AJ's bills. This house, I tapped the table, is still in my mom's name. We've only been paying the loan each month. Mom will the house to me when she passes, but she's in good health. She canceled her will and is making a new one soon, so enjoy the air miles, but do it on your sugar daddy's money. Anita drained her wine glass. Darren, what's come over you? I know you're hurting, but this is for the best. Why are you punishing me? You were never this mean. We've been through too much together. You're destroying all my plans. This isn't like you. The ringing doorbell interrupted Anita. I got up to answer it and returned with 2 Metro police officers, the same pair that had been at the house days earlier. I had called the number on the TRO paperwork when I saw Wesley's car in the driveway. Anita was shocked when the officers placed her in cuffs for violating the restraining order. Darren, she said in a panicky voice as they read her rights, you aren't going to let the mother of your child, your wife, be arrested, are you? It was hard to see the woman I once loved be taken away, but there was nothing I could do. This was her own doing. Look at it this way, Anita. You wanted to be a part-time wife and mother. This is the part of the time you're not my wife or AJ's mother, so now it's time for you to get arrested. And no, I'm not giving you a single penny to destroy my marriage and walk away to travel the world. Get out of here and never show me your face again. The hardest part was explaining to AJ that his mother and I would no longer be together. After all AJ had been through, this was hard for him to understand. I tried to explain that our family was not over, just changing. This didn't seem to help. Thank God for my brother and his family. They had always been there for me, and this time was no exception. While I dealt with the divorce mess, they took AJ on outings with their kids, keeping him busy and giving me time to adjust. Lick my wounds. Several weeks went by. The hearing on the restraining order had been interesting. Anita had put a good spin on events, but her admitted relationship with Wesley, the 911 tapes, and the Metro police officer's testimony led the judge to extend the TRO for 60 more days to allow everyone to cool off. Neither of us had filed for divorce yet. I hadn't had any contact with Anita for 3 weeks until a member of her law office called, asking for an informal meeting. I found myself sitting in a diner across from a grandfatherly-looking man whose business card identified him as the senior partner in my wife's real estate law firm. "May I call you Darren?" he began as I nodded. "I want to see if we can resolve this recent unpleasantness." I said nothing, so he continued. "The firm is very unhappy with one of our partners' actions regarding your wife. This situation has been a major distraction, affecting both our work quality and productivity. Plus, we've had to use resources on this mess. I'm very sorry about your family and the end of your marriage." "Yes, it's heartless of me not to consider the firm's condition," I said dryly. He didn't react but tried another approach. "I apologize, Darren. I didn't mean to sound uncaring. I feel for your situation. I've been married for 42 years and can only imagine what you're going through." He paused as the waitress set down our coffee before continuing. "But I have to think about my employees. Wesley was a top earner. His disbarment or conviction would negatively impact many innocent employees who had nothing to do with this incident." I started to speak, but he raised his hand to stop me. "Now wait, Darren, let me put all the cards on the table. I know you want revenge on Wesley for ending your marriage. I understand that. But isn't it enough to know that Wesley's wife will financially hurt him more than you can imagine? Marriages end every day and life goes on." I sipped my coffee before responding. "Whenever someone says they're putting all their cards on the table, I always look up their sleeves. Yes, marriages end every day and lawyers get disbarred every day too. They also go to jail." I saw a small frown cross his face. "And you, Darren, have made keeping Wesley out of jail much more difficult with your little video stunt." I laughed inwardly. I had released the tape of the confrontation with Wesley and his gym pals onto the internet and to several local TV stations. It must have been a slow news week because the 15-second clip was the comic ending on almost all the local news shows. Wesley flinging papers into the air and fleeing after the gunshots looked slapstick, almost cartoonish. Several stations added wacky sound effects and Looney Tunes music to make it even funnier. A national cable show featured it as the Stupid Criminal Tricks segment. "Darren, you should know the assistant state attorney wasn't amused by you withholding that video." I poured more sugar into my coffee. "If I read between the lines, you mean it killed the deal the ASA had cooked up to reduce Wesley's charges to a minor misdemeanor, maybe a small fine, no jail time. Am I right?" He kept a poker face, but I knew I was right. "Look, I may not have gone to college or law school, but I know how things work. This is a small town. I figured Wesley would reach out to a contact to get some professional courtesy handling. That video was my insurance to ensure Wesley got treated like any other lawbreaker." "Well, Darren, you seem to have some leverage. However, the purpose of this chat is to see what can be done to make everyone whole. On that note, what happened to Wesley's white Lexus? It was a leased company car. The firm is responsible for it, but it will be Wesley's liability if he allowed a non-leaseholder to drive it." I tried not to smile. "You might check the tow yards or chop shops. I recall seeing a white Lexus in my driveway after Anita was arrested, but it was heavily vandalized. Later, some local youths agreed to tow it away. Sorry, I can't remember their names." He sighed. "Darren, that wasn't wise. That will affect what we can do for you." He pulled out a pen, wrote a figure on a napkin, and pushed it across the table. I didn't look at it, but wrote my own figure on another napkin and placed it in front of him. His eyes widened. "We're not a large organization, Darren. Surely you must be joking. This number is outrageous." "I'm not joking, and don't call me Shirley." "May I call you Darren?" he began as I nodded. I want to see if we can resolve this recent issue." I stayed silent, so he continued. "The firm is very unhappy with what one of our partners did involving your wife. This situation has been a major distraction, affecting our work. We've had to use a lot of resources on this mess. I'm very sorry about your family and the end of your marriage." "Yes, it's heartless of me not to consider the firm's condition," I said dryly. He didn't react, but tried another approach. "I apologize, Darren. I didn't mean to sound uncaring. I feel for your situation. I've been married for 42 years and can only imagine what you're going through." He paused as the waitress set down our coffee before continuing. "But I have to think about my employees. Wesley was a top earner. His disbarment or conviction would hurt many innocent employees who had nothing to do with this incident." I started to speak, but he raised his hand to stop me. "Now wait, Darren. Let me put all the cards on the table. I know you want revenge on Wesley for ending your marriage. I understand that. But isn't it enough to know that Wesley's wife will financially hurt him more than you can imagine? Marriages end every day and life goes on." I sipped my coffee before responding. Whenever someone says they're putting all their cards on the table, I always look up their sleeves. Yes, marriages end every day and lawyers get disbarred every day too. They also go to jail. I saw a small frown cross his face. "And you, Darren, have made keeping Wesley out of jail much more difficult with your little video stunt." I laughed inwardly. I had released the tape of the confrontation with Wesley and his gym pals onto the internet and to several local TV stations. It must have been a slow news week because the 15-second clip was the comic ending on almost all the local news shows. Wesley flinging papers into the air and fleeing after the gunshots looked slapstick, almost cartoonish. Several stations added wacky sound effects and Looney Tunes music to make it even funnier. A national cable show featured it as the Stupid Criminal Trick segment. Darren, you should know the assistant state attorney wasn't amused by you withholding that video. I poured more sugar into my coffee. "If I read between the lines, you mean it killed the deal the ASA had cooked up to reduce Wesley's charges to a minor misdemeanor? Maybe a small fine, no jail time? Am I right?" He kept a poker face, but I knew I was right. "Look, I may not have gone to college or law school, but I know how things work. This is a small town. I figured Wesley would reach out to a contact to get some professional courtesy handling. That video was my insurance to ensure Wesley got treated like any other lawbreaker." "Well, Darren, you seem to have some leverage. However, the purpose of this chat is to see what can be done to make everyone whole. On that note, what happened to Wesley's white Lexus? It was a leased company car. The firm is responsible for it, but it will be Wesley's liability if he allowed a non-leaseholder to drive it." I tried not to smile. "You might check the tow yards or chop shops. I recall seeing a white Lexus in my driveway after Anita was arrested, but it was heavily vandalized. Later, some local youths agreed to tow it away. Sorry, I can't remember their names." He sighed. "Darren, that wasn't wise. That will affect what we can do for you." He pulled out a pen, wrote a figure on a napkin, and pushed it across the table. I didn't look at it, but wrote my own figure on another napkin and placed it in front of him. His eyes widened. "We're not a large organization, Darren. Surely you must be joking. This number is outrageous." "I'm not joking. And don't call me Shirley." Either he had never seen the movie *Airplane* or decided not to comment because he said, "Darren, I do not wish to spout legal advice, but you do understand we do not have any alienation of affection laws here in this state, nor does the firm have any moral clause or prohibition against what two consenting adults do on their own time. There is just no justification for a sum of this magnitude," he continued. I sat back in my chair before speaking. "This has nothing to do with my soon-to-be ex-wife, Anita, and her consenting or not consenting. I intend to go after your firm in civil court for breaking into my house and trying to harm me." "Darren, the firm had no knowledge of Wesley's actions that day, nor did we condone or approve of any such behavior of the people Wesley had contracted. That was a private matter between him and your wife." I adjusted my seat cushion, then answered. "Let me get this right. A senior member of your firm, Wesley, shows up with 2 employees of your firm in a moving van owned by your firm. Wesley had paperwork notarized by a firm's employee for a firm employee during business hours. He was acting as a supervisor with the 2 firm employees, yet Wesley made no attempt to stop the assault by his 2 firm employees. Wesley unlawfully charged into my house and refused to leave, Do I have that right? He motioned to the waitress for a coffee refill. Darren, while I am not admitting Wesley may have acted rashly, civil court cases can sometimes take decades to play out. I shrugged. I'm not going anywhere. Several law offices have already expressed interest in taking this case on a contingency basis. I named a well-known firm that caused him to take a sharp breath before I continued. The question you need to ask yourself is, how will you and the firm handle the constant depositions, endless legal proceedings, and court time? Think of it as a fee or fine for allowing this to happen. Darren, what are you looking for? Revenge? Take some friendly advice from an old man. It's not going to make you feel any better. I'm not looking for revenge, just a bit of justice. Some say there is no justice in or out of court, but in this country, justice often means a fat check. The bigger the check, the more the justice. He picked up my napkin with the figure before looking at his watch. A very nice Rolex. Darren, I will take your suggestion up with the other members of the firm. I got up to leave, pulling some bills from my pocket and tossing them on the table. Just to be clear, that number is neither a suggestion nor open to negotiation. You may have the watch, but I have the time. I thought I was in for a long legal battle. But Monday morning, a court server delivered a thick folder with divorce papers and a large check for the amount I had written on the napkin. Attached was a long contract, so I spent the afternoon with an attorney friend. The contract had the firm admitting no guilt, but required me not to interfere in any legal matters involving their senior partners about the incident at my home. The divorce let Anita walk away with only her personal possessions and half our debt. Joint custody of AJ with me as the primary caregiver. No alimony or child support on either side. I was advised to sign the papers quickly. The divorce was the best deal I could hope for. The check would pay off debts and give AJ and me some funds. I couldn't care less what happened to Wesley. It was the assistant state's attorney's call anyway. Not much I could do but make noise. Besides, any man that takes your wife deserves her. Groucho Marx once said, "When a man steals your wife, there is no better revenge than to let him keep her." I hoped that was true. At least I would get some karma. About a year after the divorce was final, all visits with AJ were arranged through my brother. Anita picked up and dropped off AJ at his place. This was at my request. I still loved Anita, and seeing her would tear my heart out. I hoped time and distance would lessen the pain. My brother and sister-in-law tried to fix me up on a few dates with nurses from the hospital, but I wasn't ready. I threw myself back into working out to fight off depression. Swimming helped relax me and tire me out so I could sleep at night. Our local gym had a nice indoor pool. I spent hours there swimming laps, losing myself in the water. Naturally, there was trouble brewing. AJ was at that age of teenage rebellion, and added to that was his resentment towards his mother. It didn't help that Anita kept sending postcards from her travels, which never seemed to venture beyond the tri-state area. Not exactly the globe-trotting I had expected. These trips made Anita miss her scheduled visits with AJ, which only built up his resentment towards her. I warned Anita through my brother that if this continued, I would ask the court for sole custody of AJ. As upset as AJ was with his mother for what she did to our family, her skipping visits with him was making it worse. After another missed visit, I hung up the phone with my brother and swore to myself. "AJ!" I yelled. "Come here now, please!" AJ appeared at my door. "Yeah, Dad?" I motioned for AJ to sit down before I began. "I just got off the phone with your uncle. He said your mom was very upset with how you acted during your visit. You want to tell me what happened?" "Dad, I hate going over there when Wes is around. That guy is a moron. AJ, I'm not asking you to be friendly with him. Just try to be civil and don't do anything rash." "See? You can't even say his name. He's still a moron, Dad." I tried to speak, but AJ rushed on. "Dad, he said Uncle working at the hospital as a pediatric nurse wasn't manly. The clown keeps making stupid comments about girly jobs. I thought college made you smart, but he's so stupid." I was amused by that bit of information. My brother had a Purple Heart from the Gulf War and a Bronze Star from when his medevac chopper went down. He fought off an insurgent attack, keeping his wounded comrades alive until help arrived. It was hard to keep a straight face after AJ's speech. "AJ, I know you think that man is an idiot, but look at this as a lesson. College just makes you educated. It doesn't make you smart. Only a fool talks like that. We both know your uncle is tougher than the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive line." AJ tried to say something, but I held up my hand to stop him. AJ, did you tell your mom you were going to put her in a second-rate nursing home in Mexico when she got old? AJ grumbled something. Speak up, I told him. Yeah, Dad, but their computer is terrible. I think you have to shovel coal into that relic to get it started. They don't even have a flat-screen monitor. I try to use my laptop, but the Wi-Fi connection is awful. If the download speed was any slower, we'd be going backward in time. I let AJ vent for a while. When this visitation thing started, I explained to AJ that I preferred he not share any information about my private life with his mother. I also didn't want to hear details about Anita's life. But being a typical kid, this just went in one ear and out the other. Between him and the details my brother let slip from Anita's rants during pickup and drop-off, I knew more than I cared to about my ex-wife's issues. For instance, Anita complained endlessly about how Wesley's wife had really raked him over the coals with the post-nuptial agreement. During the divorce, he lost the house and a large portion of his share of the business. Wesley's wife sold her share to a group of venture capitalists, who demanded measures that didn't sit well with the firm. The other partners weren't pleased with the stupid tax they were making Wesley pay out of his share of the profits and bonuses. This put a considerable crimp in Wesley's lifestyle. Anita had threatened to go for sexual harassment if Wesley didn't put a significant ring on her finger. Anita wanted the grand wedding she had always dreamed of, unlike our small, family-only affair. Wesley argued for a week in Vegas at a wedding chapel due to financial constraints. By now, AJ had run out of steam. Dad, I don't want to be in Mom's wedding. It's the same day as the Southlanders swim meet. Can I skip this one and go to her next wedding? I had to cover my mouth to stifle a laugh. This was going to be a long conversation. You know the law of unintended consequences? How everything affects everything else. The butterfly flapping its wings causes a hurricane kind of thing? Well, mine started with a simple question from my manager. Darren, do you have a valid passport? Sure. Anita, AJ, and I got one before he got sick. Then I trailed off. My manager was a good guy. He had cut me a lot of slack during my marriage troubles, so he just jumped right in. Well, Darren, we just got an urgent call from HQ. There was a car accident that injured our team from South Florida. You're leaving Friday to fill in on a cruise ship engine job, he said, grinning. Not bad, considering the weather. He motioned to the snowy scene outside the window. Thanks, I think. But why me? I stuttered. Our company was bought by a large multinational a few years back, and I never understood why they wanted a small specialty engine shop in a small northern town. But I was grateful for the improved health care and benefits they brought. My manager leaned back in his chair. Well, you were in the Navy, he said. I served one hitch and never left Pax River after training at Great Lakes. I've never been on anything bigger than a dinghy. The Navy found I had a knack for tech stuff, so I spent my time working on jet engines at the base in Maryland. So what? That's more than most guys. Plus, you do that biofuel thing, and this has to do with fuel additives, he replied. I just brew biodiesel in my garage. I'm not a professional. Darren, you know professionals built the Titanic while amateurs built the Ark, right? He tossed a thick binder full of computer CDs at me. You're the best programmer and jet turbo tech we have. That makes you the one-eyed king in the land of the blind. Be serious, I pleaded. I can't leave my son now. He leaned forward on his desk. Darren, I know your situation. I've tried to help you out. But I really need you on this one. Consider it a personal favor to me. I nodded, looking down at the binder full of information I'd have to learn. Oh well, I thought, either be good, or get gone. I learned that modern cruise ships no longer use diesel engines to turn shafts with blades. Some now have jet turbines that generate electricity to power dual electric pods hanging below the ship like outboard motors. These pods give the ships great maneuverability, able to turn 360 degrees and even move sideways. While electric jet turbines are cleaner than diesels, the jet-like fuel is far more expensive. Our company was testing camelina oil and algae-based biofuel, HR7. It required changes to complex computer-controlled variables on the jet turbines. A small fortune was at stake if we could prove it worked, as we also sold the controls, electric generator jet turbines, and had a controlling interest in biofuel refining for marine applications. That's why I was seated next to a scowling senior engineer from Scotland named Seamus Isaac. I mistakenly called him English, which was a big insult to a Scot. "Call me Mac, you bloody fool," Mac said as we sat on a plane for a set of flights headed to a port I had to look up on Google Earth. "If you have anything to say, now would be the time to keep it to yourself. We're boarding a ship of the Royal Ocean Line called the Royal Viking." "I hope I don't get seasick," I muttered. Mac rolled his eyes. "This isn't a tugboat, you stupid Yank. She's over 100,000 tons and 17 decks high. She'd be eye to eye with the Statue of Liberty. This vessel has an indoor ice skating rink, hospital, TV studio, nightclubs, conference center, movie theater, shopping center, bars. Everything you'd expect from a small city. Even a Ferris wheel for the kids on the top deck with their own swimming pool. The lifeboats alone are over 30 feet long and hold 150 passengers with supplies for a week." "Mac, if this is such a big deal, why not wait until your team heals up from the car crash?" "A couple of reasons, laddie. Our company isn't the only one in this race, and we're already behind. We need to get a proven product on the market fast. Ships, captains, and staff are conservative and leery of new ideas. They don't trust anything that could leave them dead in the water. Sometimes I think they'd still have sails on the ships. Second, it's tough to get berths on a good ship. Any cabins they give to us is lost revenue. We planned this trip way in advance because cabins would be open due to the Royal Viking's repositioning and fear of pirates." "You mean like Johnny Depp and Pirates of the Caribbean?" Mac rolled his eyes. "Have you looked at your plane ticket, you idiot? We're headed near the African coast. I'm talking about Somali pirates. Don't you watch the news? The kind your Navy SEALs took out?" Mac stopped a flight attendant to ask for a drink before continuing. "I was in the special boat service myself. We all toasted those SEALs for that operation." "Shit, Mac, I didn't sign up to walk the plank," I said, feeling worried. "Now, Darren, don't get your panties in a twist. Our ship will be far off the coast and those pirate boats won't reach us. Besides, you're a young, single guy. There'll be plenty of crew members to keep your mind off any Somali Blackbeard." "Mac, I'm not a cowboy. I've never even been on a horse." "Just the same, keep your pecker in your pants until we get the job done." Mac took a long gulp of his drink. "Did you bring the stuff I told you?" "Sure, Mac," I answered. "What's all the candy and bottles of aquavit for?" "Listen, my young friend, 4 things are currency on a ship to get things done. Booze, spicy videos, candy, and internet phone cards." Mac reached into his pocket and pulled out a fistful of phone cards. "Our satellite division handles the data off the ship so we can hand these out. The Royal Vikings officers are Norwegian, and the aquavit gets us goodwill with the captain, staff captain, and chief engineer. If this was a Greek ship, we'd bring ouzo. On a British vessel, the officers prefer scotch or whiskey." "You're kidding me, right?" "No, I'm not. Look, Darren, we're asking these guys to work extra hours without extra pay, so any perks help. The crew can make or break this project." Mac turned to me. "The workers from the Balkans love Tootsie Rolls, while the Eastern Europeans go crazy for bubblegum. The Filipino guys crave milk chocolate. Got it?" "Got it. Whole different world, Mac." "Yep, with over 100 nationalities on the Royal Viking, you got that right?" Mac pulled out his laptop. "Let's go over our plan." Mac knew his stuff. He was greeted warmly by his old friend, the ship's captain, a blonde giant named Sven. The bottles of aquavit smoothed my introductions. The crew was more than willing to help as we handed out phone cards. I felt like it was Halloween, passing out candy, but I followed Mac's lead since he'd been right so far. Our project was going well. After the first day of trial and error, I made the necessary computer adjustments to the turbines to accept our biofuels for maximum efficiency. The chief engineer was wary, still preferring their standard modified jet fuel. He kept delaying full-scale tests, even after short runs showed no issues. Mac was trying to convince the chief engineer to run a full-scale test when I turned around and banged my head on a bulkhead. This made the crew laugh. It didn't hurt much, but my forehead was bleeding a bit. Despite my protests, the chief engineer told a junior Filipino engineer to take me to sickbay. At sickbay, I was stuck filling out forms, just like at any hospital. Then I heard something and looked up. The ship's nurse was calling my name. Her name tag said her name was Zoe, and she was from one of the old Soviet Union republics. Her last name seemed to contain the chemical symbol for boron, but it wasn't the name tag I was looking at. This raven-haired beauty was stunning. She had curves in all the right places, high cheekbones and oval blue eyes matching her medical smock. The smock didn't hide her killer figure. She looked to be in her late 20s with her hair swept to one side, almost covering one side of her face. A megawatt smile revealed a neat row of white teeth. When she called my name, her voice had a mix of Eastern European and British accents. The pain in my forehead was instantly forgotten. Zoe, the nurse, asked me to follow her into the medical center. I stared at her sexy hips moving like two cats fighting in a sack, vowing to follow her anywhere. As I sat down, Zoe looked at my paperwork before speaking. "So, Mr. Please call me Darren," I interrupted. "Certainly, Darren," Zoe said, giving me a hint of her 300-watt smile. As Zoe took my blood pressure and vitals, I did my best to engage her in conversation. Zoe was gentle and professional, but my charm didn't seem to impress her at all. The ship doctor, another blonde Nordic giant, came in and after a quick exam, declared me clumsy but fine, with no injuries except to my pride. He shook my hand and left. "Darren," Zoe addressed me. "Yes," I said, almost jumping to attention. "Let's get you some aspirin in case you have a headache later." "No problem, Zoe, I have a tough noggin," I said, tapping my head with a knuckle. Zoe looked confused. "What is noggin?" "Forget it, Zoe." I was trying to think of a way to keep talking to her. Being out of the dating scene for over a decade, I wasn't sure what to do. "Zoe, will I see you later?" She gave me a half smile. "Well, Darren, I will be in the officers' bar at 20 o'clock hours tonight." She paused as I looked confused. "Darren, that is 10 p.m. in your American time. I would, as you say, much enjoy seeing you there." I said goodbye to Zoe and saw my Filipino junior engineer still in the medical center lobby staring at me. "What?" I asked. He chuckled. "I've never seen Zoe smile before. We call her the Ice Queen on the ship. She's always nice but keeps everyone at a distance. You want to share some of those New York City or Los Angeles lines you used on her with me?" I laughed. "Not all of us are from New York or LA. There's a lot of America between those coasts. Let's get back to the engine room." That evening, the officers broke out the bottles of aquavit I had brought. The bar was a whirlwind of accents: Nordic, German, Eastern European, Caribbean, and several others I couldn't understand. I found the biggest language barriers were with the crew members from the UK. Although we shared the same language, we often used different words. Torch meant flashlight, spanner meant wrench, lift meant elevator, petrol meant fuel, bonnet meant hood. We were united by the same tongue but divided by a common language. I saw a Spanish crew member ask his Dutch counterpart if they were speaking English or American. At first, it didn't make sense, but now I understood. These people could really drink. Mac had warned me on the plane. "Look, Darren, my boy, I don't care how well you think you can hold your booze. Any 20-year-old Aussie girl will drink you under the table. Unlike the States, there's generally no age limit for alcohol in most countries. So while you were sneaking beers at your graduation, these kids were already drinking a liter of ale." Heeding Mac's warning, I stuck to ginger ale after a few toasts with the aquavit. I couldn't understand what those pale monsters saw in that drink. It tasted like lighter fluid. Mac was engaged in a heated debate about firearms with the Israeli chief of security when I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned to see Zoe, the nurse, standing above me. "Darren, may I sit and talk with you for a while?" she asked. "Sure, Zoe," I replied, grabbing a chair from a nearby table. "What would you like to drink? We brought some aquavit." Zoe wrinkled her nose. "I'll have a glass of white wine, please." I returned with Zoe's drink. We were alone at the table as an impromptu dart game had roped in most of the patrons. "Thank you, Darren," Zoe said, sipping her glass. "No problem, Zoe." I racked my brain for something to say. "How long have you been on ships?" "This is my second contract on this ship," Zoe replied. "I did 2 other contracts on the Royal Viking's sister ship." "How long is a contract?" Zoe smiled. "My contracts range between 6 and 8 months on the ship, with about 6 to 8 weeks off." "Do you go home then? Where do you call home?" Zoe paused before answering. "I mostly stay a few days here and there with various crew members I've made friends with. Otherwise, I camp out at a hotel. Home, well, that's a long story." I could listen to this lady talk all night, but I felt this wasn't a story I would hear now. "Do you like it?" I asked, trying to keep the conversation going. Yes, Darren, it's not so bad a life. Enough about me. Tell me about you and your life in America. I gave Zoe the short version of my little town and showed her a picture of AJ on my phone. I explained how I had come to be on the ship. Zoe returned my phone with AJ's picture. You and your wife must be very proud of him. Sad to say, Zoe, we're not together anymore. AJ stays with me now. Zoe seemed a little shocked. Your son's mother is not with him? What kind of woman would... She stopped herself. Sorry, Darren. None of my business. Changing the subject, Zoe asked, We're going to do the Caribbean run out of Miami and Fort Lauderdale this season. It'll be my first time in North America. I look forward to it. Are you near those ports? No, I shook my head, but my mom is retired. She lives in South Florida now, and I've been meaning to visit her. Maybe we can meet up. Zoe gave me another smile. I'd like that, Darren. Just then, the dart game broke up and the table became crowded again. Zoe became quieter, more reserved. It was as if there were two Zoes, the polite professional with the staff and the friendly lady I had just been chatting with. I was enjoying my time with this international group, but started to feel tired after a while. Zoe must have noticed because she finished her wine and turned to me. Darren, I have to get up early. Would you walk me to my cabin? Talk about an energy boost. I jumped up as Zoe said goodnight to our table mates. As we walked through the ship, Zoe nodded to passengers, stopping now and then to say a few words to various guests. From the conversations, it was clear these people had recently visited sickbay. Zoe took great interest in their answers. I was impressed by her concern for people she had just met and might never see again. Finally, we reached the officer area of the ship and stood in front of her cabin door. Zoe turned to look me in the eye. Darren, I enjoy talking with you and would like to see more of you. But as large as this ship is, it is still small, and I do not wish to be, as you say, another notch on your belt. She then gave me a kiss that knocked my socks off. When I tried to embrace her, Zoe pushed me back. Darren, there is something you need to see first. With that, Zoe pulled back her hair with one hand, exposing the left side of her face. The other hand pulled down the neckline of her blouse, showing her left shoulder. All of Zoe's skin from her left temple down her neck and over her shoulder was an ugly mass of mottled, discolored skin, pockmarked and rough. I stared for a second until Zoe turned away, letting her hair fall back into place and rearranging her top to hide the scars. She spoke as she turned to face me. Childhood accident, Darren. I understand if you are offended. I finally found my voice. So what, Zoe? That doesn't change what a great person you are. She smiled and put her finger on my lips. You are kind to say that, even if you do not mean it. She shook her head as I tried to speak. Darren, sleep on it. If you still feel the same way, meet me for lunch on the top deck tomorrow. With that, Zoe disappeared into her cabin. I could not wait for lunch to see Zoe again. Mac was in better spirits now that our major issues seemed to be resolved. But he was still having no luck convincing the chief engineer to run full out on our fuel. At noon, Mac and I met an elderly group of his countrymen who were on holiday with their wives. They spent some time talking and swapping war stories. The older Scotsmen were telling what sounded like tall tales of the good old days. I was waiting for Zoe to arrive, wandering away from the group on the top deck. Then one of the Scotsmen's wives, peering over the railing, shrieked, "Pirates! Pirates!" We all rushed to the side railing, and I was astonished to see two Zodiac boats with a bunch of raggedly dressed, armed men against the side of the ship. 4 more Zodiac boats were racing toward us. The ship's security officer dashed to the stairway, pulling out his radio as he ran. Code Papa! Code Papa! This is not a drill. All security personnel to stations. Prepare to repel boarders. I repeat, this is not a drill. Code Papa! We continued to stare over the railings when one of the guys on the Zodiac raised an AK-47 and fired a volley of bullets in our direction. Jesus Christ! I shouted, throwing myself away from the railing like everyone else. I hit the deck and crawled away as fast as I could. Then I saw Mac leap to his feet. Come on, lads, don't just lie there, Mac shouted, waving his hands and pointing to the railing. Let's show these maggots what happens when they mess with Scotsmen. Suddenly, a cry rose up from the elderly group that shook me to my bones. This crazy mob of Scots jumped up, rushing to grab bottles off the tables and jostling each other as they raced to the railing. They started throwing wine bottles, magnums, jugs, and decanters over the side at the pirates. After the bottles were gone, they hurled deck chairs at the attackers, heedless of the gunfire. I watched in disbelief as these old men picked up entire tables and flung them over the side. It wasn't just the men. I saw the wives throwing their high-heeled shoes, umbrellas, ashtrays, dishes, cups, and glasses, anything they could find. Even entire coffee services became hand-thrown missiles. Anything not bolted down was tossed at our attackers. I couldn't believe it. But these Bravehearts' antics were holding off the boarders. The Zodiacs backed away from the ship as the barrage continued. On the deck above, the ship's security staff were fitting parabolic devices onto mounts as the ship surged forward. Mac pointed up at the security staff and yelled, "Give those maggots the sonic blast!" He grinned as he pulled me up off the deck, pointing out the devices in the Zodiac surrounding the ship. "One of our divisions makes those noise toys. They can blow out eardrums with a narrow sound beam." I was terrified, but Mac seemed to be having the time of his life. "Look there, laddie," Mac said, pointing out a larger boat in the distance. "That's their mothership. They wouldn't have made it this far without it." "Mac, can't we just outrun them?" I asked, trying to stop shaking. "Got to take out that mothership or they'll keep following us." As if Captain Sven heard him, our ship turned and headed full speed at the mothership. Meanwhile, the old Scots crowded the railing, shaking their fists at the Zodiacs and calling the pirates vile names. One elderly man undid his pants, bared his butt, and mooned the pirates. Then all the men and women started dropping trousers and lifting skirts, showing off their bare backsides. Even as scared as I was, I couldn't help but giggle at the sight. Meanwhile, our ship was bearing down on the pirates' mothership at full speed. A dozen Zodiacs were trying to keep up with us like angry sea dogs. Some saw what the captain was doing and started firing small arms and RPGs at the ship. As the two ships closed in, Captain Sven poured on the steam. The pirates' mothership tried to pull away, but Captain Sven was having none of that. Our ship shuddered as we rammed the pirate ship in its aft section, tearing off the props and most of its tail. A triumphant shout went up from the group as Mac yelled, "That bugger's done for! She's dead in the water!" I was elated for a moment, but saw we had another problem. The pirates in the Zodiacs were now desperate to board our ship, their only choices being our ship or being stranded in the middle of the ocean. I ran for the engine room, getting thrown against the hallway walls as Captain Sven made sharp turns to overturn the smaller Zodiacs. Reaching the engine room, I quickly explained to the chief engineer what I wanted to do. The big Nordic gave swift orders to his staff and then turned to me. "Go, Darren. We give them pirates some Viking thunder." He slapped me on the back so hard I almost fell over. I followed the Filipino junior engineer who was holding a box to an upper deck. Standing at the railing on the back aft of the crew deck, we saw at least a dozen Zodiacs closing in on the ship. A loud gush came as the dump pumps discharged hundreds of gallons of modified jet fuel from the ship's tanks into the water. The Filipino and I grabbed a handful of flares from the box as the pirates got closer. I am sure I have done dumber things than throwing lit flares onto an ocean of jet fuel, but at that moment I couldn't recall any. The first few flares went out or had no effect. I knew the fuel was lighter than seawater and must be on the surface. Panic rose as a pirate Zodiac almost reached the ship. Suddenly, I remembered it was the vapors from the fuel that burn, not the fuel itself. We were down to our last flares when, unexpectedly, a massive whoosh of air crackled through the sky. The churning wake from the ship had agitated the fuel enough to create vapors. These vapors ignited, creating a small fuel-air bomb close to the water's surface. A mini mushroom cloud rose up as a fireball spread out, sucking oxygen from the air. The Filipino was faster and wiser, ducking behind the ship's railing plate. I was still standing there with my mouth open, staring, when the blast reached the ship, slamming into me hard. The last thing I remember was being hurled several yards into the aft bulkhead before darkness overcame me. I tried to open my eyes, but my vision wouldn't focus. It felt like the worst hangover in the world. My head throbbed. My face felt stiff. My body felt like it had been hit by a sledgehammer. Even my hair hurt. "About bloody time you woke up, you lazy sod," someone said in a thick Scottish accent. As I turned my head and my vision cleared, I saw Mac sitting beside me in a chair. I was in a bed, but it wasn't my tiny contractor cabin. This bed was massive, and the room was huge with paintings on the walls. I even saw a grand piano reflected in the large sliding glass patio doors that led to a balcony overlooking the sea. Mac saw my confusion and grinned. "Not bad, Darren. After your little Texas barbecue stunt, the passengers in the royal suite insisted you stay here to recover. They moved to another cabin. I told you I'm not from Texas, although I do make a mean grill." I looked around again. "Mac, this is really too much. I just got lucky, that's all." Mac got up, rubbing his hands. "I'd rather be good than lucky any day, Darren. The whole ship is talking about that cowboy feat you pulled off. Last I heard, they said you drank the fuel while lighting fire out your butt, shooting flames at them bloody pirates." I tried to smile, but the sides of my cheeks burned in pain. Mac got a solemn look on his face. "Seriously, Darren, that quick thinking took a big brass set of balls to back it up?" Mac paused before a smile returned to his face. "That exploit was almost special boat service worthy. Now don't you get a big head, I said almost." I touched my face. It hurt like hell. Mac started pacing the room. "Never thought of ducking for cover, Darren. My instructor used to say to be sure of hitting the target, shoot first, then call whatever you hit the target." I tried to sit up in bed. "Mac, I thought I was a goner when that blast hit me." Mac grabbed a mirror off the dresser, shoving it in my face. "You fool! You're too ugly to die!" I gasped, putting a hand to my face, confirming it was really my reflection in the mirror. My eyebrows were gone, a lot of my hair was singed away, and some white salve was on my nose and lips. The rest of my face looked like a bad sunburn. To top it off, my left eye was swollen, ringed with 3 different shades of red, purple, and yellow. Just then, Zoe came out of the bathroom, ever the professional in her medical garb with a stethoscope around her neck. "Mac, I'm going to make you leave if you upset my patient." Zoe then shoved a digital probe into my mouth that was attached to a monitor. At the same time, she wrapped a blood pressure cuff around my bicep. Mac ignored Zoe. "I've got more good news, Darren. Because the ship dumped most of its standard fuel frying those pirates, the Royal Viking has been running on our biofuel for the better part of 2 days." He got up and clapped his hands. "Been running great, too. Even that hard-headed Nordic chief engineer is happy." Zoe turned, pointing toward the door. "That's it, Mac. Out. Don't make me have the captain call security on you." "Okay, lassie, I'm going. Mac threw me a salute as he left. Zoe turned to me, and I was surprised to see tears in her eyes that she wiped away with the cuff of her sleeve. "Darren, what am I going to do with you?" Between the ship doctor looking me over, the rest of the day was a steady parade of visitors, with Zoe keeping visit times to a minimum. She watched over me like a hawk, ushering even the captain out when she felt my strength was waning. My favorite visitors were the passengers who had given up this massive suite for me. I was surprised to see it was the elderly Scot who had first dropped his pants to moon the pirates. He and his wife were quite the couple, refusing to accept my thanks for using their accommodations. "Think nothing of it, Darren," the old man said with a smile. "Didn't think you'd recognize me with my pants on." His wife swatted him. "Oh, hush you." She turned to me. "You've given us quite a story to tell our grandchildren when we get home." "Yes," her husband broke in, "and they'll be mightily bored by the tale." We chatted a bit longer until Zoe ushered them out. I was really feeling exhausted, so when Zoe closed the blinds, I was out like a light. A moment of panic came over me as I fought to recognize my surroundings. It was dark, hard to make things out. A soft but firm naked form was wrapped around my body. I knew it was female by the perfume smell. Anita? My heart jumped as my eyes adjusted to the dim light while conscious thought returned. Then disappointment spread. It couldn't be my former wife, Anita. This lady had dark hair. Anita was blonde. As my fingers traced the nape of her neck, I felt rough skin. I recoiled for a moment before it hit me. My mind screamed, "Damn it, Zoe!" I felt Zoe stiffen when I pulled my hand away. I tried to pretend it was to stretch out a stiff muscle. "It's okay, Darren," Zoe said softly. It felt like the worst hangover in the world. My head throbbed, my face felt stiff, and my body felt like it had been hit by a sledgehammer. Even my hair hurt. "About bloody time you woke up, you lazy sod," someone said in a thick Scottish accent. As I turned my head and my vision cleared, I saw Mac sitting beside me in a chair. I was in a bed, But it wasn't my tiny contractor cabin. This bed was massive, and the room was huge with paintings on the walls. I even saw a grand piano reflected in the large sliding glass patio doors that led to a balcony overlooking the sea. Mac saw my confusion and grinned. "Not bad, Darren? After your little Texas barbecue stunt, the passengers in the royal suite insisted you stay here to recover. They moved to another cabin. I told you I'm not from Texas, although I do make a mean grill." I looked around again. "Mac, this is really too much. I just got lucky, that's all." Mac got up, rubbing his hands. "I'd rather be good than lucky any day, Darren. The whole ship is talking about that cowboy feat you pulled off. Last I heard, they said you drank the fuel while lighting fire out your butt, shooting flames at them bloody pirates." I tried to smile, but the sides of my cheeks burned in pain. Mac got a solemn look on his face. "Seriously, Darren, that quick thinking took a big brass set of balls to back it up." Mac paused before a smile returned to his face. "That exploit was almost special boat service worthy. Now don't you get a big head." I said almost. I touched my face. It hurt like hell. Mac started pacing the room. "Never thought of ducking for cover, Darren. My instructor used to say to be sure of hitting the target. Shoot first, then call whatever you hit the target." I tried to sit up in bed. "Mac, I thought I was a goner when that blast hit me." Mac grabbed a mirror off the dresser, shoving it in my face. "You fool! You're too ugly to die!" I gasped, putting a hand to my face, confirming it was really my reflection in the mirror. My eyebrows were gone. A lot of my hair was singed away, and some white salve was on my nose and lips. The rest of my face looked like a bad sunburn. To top it off, my left eye was swollen, ringed with 3 different shades of red, purple, and yellow. Just then, Zoe came out of the bathroom, ever the professional in her medical garb with a stethoscope around her neck. "Mac, I'm going to make you leave if you upset my patient." Zoe then shoved a digital probe into my mouth that was attached to a monitor. At the same time, she wrapped a blood pressure cuff around my bicep. Mac ignored Zoe. "I've got more good news, Darren, because the ship dumped most of its standard fuel frying those pirates. The Royal Viking has been running on our biofuel for the better part of 2 days. He got up and clapped his hands. "Been running great, too. Even that hard-headed Nordic chief engineer is happy." Zoe turned, pointing toward the door. "That's it, Mac, out. Don't make me have the captain call security on you." "Okay, lassie, I'm going. Mac threw me a salute as he left. Zoe turned to me, and I was surprised to see tears in her eyes that she wiped away with the cuff of her sleeve. "Darren, what am I going to do with you?" Between the ship doctor looking me over, the rest of the day was a steady parade of visitors, with Zoe keeping visit times to a minimum. She watched over me like a hawk, ushering even the captain out when she felt my strength was waning. My favorite visitors were the passengers who had given up this massive suite for me. I was surprised to see it was the elderly Scot who had first dropped his pants to moon the pirates. He and his wife were quite the couple, refusing to accept my thanks for using their accommodations. "Think nothing of it, Darren," the old man said with a smile. "Didn't think you'd recognize me with my pants on." His wife swatted him. "Oh, hush, you," she turned to me. "You've given us quite a story to tell our grandchildren when we get home." "Yes," her husband broke in, "and they'll be mightily bored by the tale." We chatted a bit longer until Zoe ushered them out. I was really feeling exhausted, so when Zoe closed the blinds, I was out like a light. A moment of panic came over me as I fought to recognize my surroundings. It was dark, hard to make things out. A soft but firm, naked form was wrapped around my body. I knew it was female by the perfume smell. Anita? My heart jumped as my eyes adjusted to the dim light, while conscious thought returned. Then disappointment spread. It couldn't be my former wife, Anita. This lady had dark hair. Anita was blonde. As my fingers traced the nape of her neck, I felt rough skin. I recoiled for a moment before it hit me. My mind screamed, "Damn it, Zoe!" I felt Zoe stiffen when I pulled my hand away. I tried to pretend it was to stretch out a stiff muscle. "It's okay, Darren," Zoe said softly. "I know what it feels like and how I look. That's why I left the lights off." Rolling over quickly, the sudden pain shocked me wide awake. It also reminded me to move slower next time. I found the bedside lamp and turned it on. Zoe was on her side, facing me. Reaching up, she tried to cover the disfigurement with her hair. I grabbed her hand, pushing away her hair so I could see her face fully. You are beautiful the way you are. Please don't try to hide any part of you from me." Zoe looked past me before she began speaking. "My parents were not high in the party, so I could not get reconstructive surgery after the fire when I was 8. Many in our small town were superstitious. They felt my looks were a punishment for something bad I or my parents had done. Most would not allow their children to play with me. I never got used to the names or taunts." Zoe rolled onto her back, looking at the ceiling. "I studied hard, was first in all my classes, and qualified for university. I was to be an anesthesiologist." She paused. "My patients would be unconscious and never need to see my face. I had my first boyfriend there at University Medical School. I thought he saw past my scars. Then I heard him tell his friends the only way to be with me was with a sack over my face or in the dark." Zoe took a deep breath and continued. "I forgot about him and concentrated on my studies. I was a very good anesthesiologist, always first in my classes and later in great demand by our government hospitals. Then my father did something to upset the party. They took him and my mother away. A patient warned me, so I fled the country ahead of the government police. I ended up in various parts of Europe with no way to retrieve my qualifications. I could not practice medicine anywhere. I completed a nursing course while working nights as a cleaner." Zoe turned to face me, propping herself up on an elbow. "That is my sad story, Darren. As I said, this is a small ship, and I'm not, how you say, a 304. If you want me to leave, I will." I put Zoe's chin in my hand so she was looking directly at me. "You are, without a doubt, the most amazing woman I have ever met. I feel like I've been moaning about my little setbacks, living life like a chicken compared to you." I saw her eyes twinkle in amusement. "And Zoe, as for wanting you to leave..." I grabbed her and kissed her. Zoe smiled as she started to kiss me back. "Darren, can we turn out the lights?" "I may be too ugly to die, Zoe, but there is no chance I'm turning out the lights. Not a chance. Hear that?" I said, pulling her toward me. I wish I could say our lovemaking that night was magical. However, if you've ever tried to kiss someone with burnt lips and painful bruises all over your body, it's like two porcupines having sex. It was quite an event, slow and careful. The only magic that night was that I was able to do anything at all, let alone a second time. Alas, nothing lasts forever. 4 days later, Zoe and I said goodbye. She promised to come stay with me when her contract ended. I was already looking for airfare for the dates when the Royal Viking came to Florida. The pirate event got some airtime, but it was old news by the time I arrived home. My son and brother's family were a bit shocked by my appearance, although I had healed up a bit by then. All I could say was, "You should have seen the other guy." When I returned to work, my co-workers had a small party for me, complete with a pirate-themed cake. They decked out my work area with buccaneer paraphernalia. My bench was covered with a skull and crossbones, a fake eye patch, a stuffed parrot, and a toy cutlass. The machine shop even churned out a peg leg for me. The Blackbeard and Captain Jack jokes were fast and heavy for the first few days, even real stock options with profit sharing. That night I talked to my son AJ about moving to Florida. "Dad," AJ said, "sunny Florida instead of this frozen slush? Plus a chance to see Grandma? When do we leave?" Then I got a second surprise from my brother the day after I told him about the offer. "Darren, we're coming with you," my brother said. "A realtor has been bugging us to sell in this red-hot market. My wife and I are both nurses, so we can get jobs anywhere. It will be great for the kids to be around their grandmother. Besides, we're tired of this cold weather where everyone has blonde hair and blue ears." So that's how we ended up with a rental house near the beach outside Fort Lauderdale. The place was a stately old manor with plenty of room, which was good since my brother's family was staying with us. Life was good. My mother was thrilled to have her grandchildren nearby. My new job with Mac as my boss was interesting. The cruise industry was large, but a very close-knit community centered near Miami. Everybody knew about the pirate attack and wanted to hear about it. Mac, ever the salesman, trotted me out like a show horse at every occasion. He used the opportunities to push our products from biofuels to communication equipment and even the noise toys, the long-range acoustic devices called LRAD, used on the pirates that day. I was at a cruise port almost every day, either on a ship or giving a presentation at some company boardroom. I met more people from more nations than I had in my whole life up north. AJ and his cousins got a chance to practice their conversational Spanish after years of lessons. This caused some confusion when AJ approached me after hanging out with some new Latino friends. "Dad, these people here don't speak Spanish, right?" AJ asked one day. I chuckled. "Let's see if we can figure this out, AJ. Is the Spanish taught to you by your teacher who spent a summer in Madrid correct? Or is it possible that your buddies, who have been speaking the language from birth, speak it correctly?" South Florida had a thriving Latin community. I even picked up a few words, but AJ and his friends laughed at my Spanglish attempts. Best of all about the move to Florida was that I got to see Zoe every 10 days when the Royal Viking came into port. I was nervous when Zoe and AJ met, but my worries were unfounded. They became best buds after 10 minutes. "Look, Dad," AJ exclaimed, holding up a piece of string Zoe had given him during a tour of the medical center. "Zoe taught me to tie a knot with one hand, just like surgeons do." "Not bad, AJ. Zoe is like the bomb, Dad. She speaks like a zillion languages." Zoe came up and hugged me. "Now, AJ, I only speak 7 languages fluently." "Listen to this, Dad," AJ said, then spouted out some cryptic words. He looked at Zoe. "Did I say that right?" Zoe patted AJ on the shoulder. "Yes, AJ, you pronounced that perfectly." She had a mischievous look in her eye. "What's it mean, AJ?" I asked. "It means eat dirt and die in Uzbek," AJ beamed. "Isn't that cool, Dad?" I turned toward my laughing girlfriend. Zoe gave me that beautiful smile. "Oh, Darren, it's okay. How many Uzbeks does AJ know in South Florida who are going to understand what he's saying?" After getting the proper security and port passes, I ended up taking AJ with me to the Royal Viking every time I went to see Zoe. Various crew members were happy to keep AJ entertained while Zoe and I had some private time. AJ got to see every part of the ship, from the engine room to the TV studios, the bridge, the galley, and of course, the medical center. The only problem was that everyone on the ship seemed to delight in teaching AJ to swear in their native tongues. To my horror, AJ soon could curse fluently in Norwegian, German, Creole, Dutch, Filipino, Finnish, Russian, and even Hebrew. But all good things must come to an end. The phone call I answered Monday morning changed everything. "Hello, Darren." After over a decade of marriage, I knew Anita's voice instantly. "Yes, this is Darren. May I ask who is calling?" I couldn't resist yanking Anita's chain. "Darren, you damn well know this is Anita," she said calmly from the other end of the line. "It can't be Anita. I asked she not contact me unless it was an emergency concerning AJ." I switched my phone to the other ear. "What do you want, Anita?" "I thought you would be over this by now. I want to see my son." "Anita, the lawyers told you the court gave me sole custody after you missed so many scheduled visitations with AJ." "I know, and I am sorry. The travel with Wesley just made things so crazy. You know what they say? Behind every successful executive boss man is a female secretary." "Anita, is there a saying for a cheating married secretary on her knees in front of the executive boss man? Or spread eagle on her back under the executive boss man?" "Darren, stop being so crude. I want to see AJ." "He's still my son, Anita. You can't get AJ excited and then not show up. He's your son, not a hair appointment." "No need to bore me with a lecture, Darren. Wesley has a timeshare near you. We'll be down next week. Can I take AJ for a long weekend? Wesley has a boat. AJ can go water skiing." "This weekend, AJ is planning to go to the Marlins baseball game with my brother's family. I'll be away doing some work on a ship," I replied. "Yes, I heard you were doing boat engine work. Little fishing charters and stuff, right? I'm so happy for you," Anita said condescendingly. "Yeah, something like that. So can you have AJ this weekend or not?" I asked. "Yes, Darren, the boy needs to know he was born from a mother. Don't screw this up. If you promise to come, you better show up." "Oh, Darren," Anita started. "Anita, I don't wish to hurt you, but it's still on my list. Be here Friday, don't be late." I hung up the phone. Naturally, Anita didn't show up on Friday, waiting until Thursday night to cancel. Anita was unapologetic. "Darren, surely you can understand the situation. Wesley got a great last-minute deal on a cruise. He knows the bar waiter's brother. We could get upgraded. It will be my first time out of the country, a chance to use my passport." "Damn it, Anita, you can't do this to your son." I was pissed. "I'm not going to argue with you about this, Darren," Anita countered. "I don't argue with idiots. They drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. You get all fired up. Now I have to clean up this mess." "Darren, Don't be such a drama queen. He will understand, Anita replied. I will make it up to him another time. Don't bother. I hung up the phone. I should have been happy. The Royal Viking was in port, and I was going to be sailing on her for 3 days. My task was to upload new engine control software before she went into dry dock. I would be staying with Zoe in her cabin, but Anita's stunt with AJ had put me in a foul mood. Thank God my brother took his godfather duties seriously. He got the extra ticket back so AJ could come to the Marlins game with his cousins. My attitude instantly improved when Zoe gave me a big hug and kiss. She sensed my mood. Everything okay, Darren? She asked, running her fingers through my hair. Did I do something wrong? I explained the situation with Anita and AJ. Zoe was understanding. That is terrible, Darren. We must do something for AJ, Zoe said. But I do have some good news. Actually, 2 pieces of good news. I could use some good news, Zoe. Come on, don't tease me. Captain Sven heard you were coming. He wants us to join him tomorrow in the passenger dining room. I even got you a tux. We can get a formal picture together. Zoe was almost beaming. I tried to be excited for Zoe's sake, but spending the evening in a monkey suit was not high on my list. Zoe continued, Better yet, Darren, during the 10-day dry dock, I'm not needed, so I can either stay on the ship doing fire watch or... No way are you staying on the ship, I said, picking Zoe up and hugging her around the waist. You are staying as a guest at Chez Darren. AJ has been bugging me to see the sights. We are going to show you the best South Florida has to offer. Darren, put me down, Zoe squealed as I returned her to the ground. She gave me a look, then said softly, I hoped you would say that. The ship's tailor did a great job. The tux fit perfectly. I did look damn good, if I do say so myself. Zoe was stunning in her evening gown, and I really was enjoying the night. Captain Sven was a fine host, and the food was excellent. Suddenly, an angry male voice boomed out from behind me. What the hell is that bum doing here? The whole room went silent. Everyone at the table turned. I was astonished to see my ex-wife Anita standing there with a red-faced Wesley. Captain Sven rose from the table, towering over Wesley. When Captain Sven spoke, his voice was every inch the commanding captain. Excuse me, sir. This man, Darren, is an honored guest of the Royal Viking and her crew. Now, if you will be so kind, the waiter will show you back to your table. Have a good evening. Anita's face was pale. She seemed more in shock at seeing me in a tux at the captain's table than I was at seeing her. Wesley, however, must have had a few drinks and would not let it go. Screw that. Listen up, you love boat wannabe. We get stuck at some lousy table by the kitchen while this prick, Wesley pointed at me, gets to sit at the goddamn table of honor. No way, sailor boy. Captain Sven stared down Wesley for a moment, who started to wilt. Sir, I assure you the cuisine is just as fine at every table in this dining room. Now, will you allow my staff to provide you with excellent service, or shall I have security remove you? Anita looked like she wanted to shrink into her shoes. She tugged at Wesley's suit coat sleeve. Wesley, Anita whispered, everyone is staring at us. Let's just go sit down. Wesley turned on her. Screw you too, I don't need your fat butt telling me what to do. You give me the world's worst BJ before dinner and now I see this crap. I'm going back to that tiny cabin without a window they call a room. With that, he stormed out of the dining room. Anita stood there, stunned, with her hands covering her face as all the diners stared at her. The room was still silent. I knew I shouldn't, but I couldn't resist. I cleared my throat loudly. Everyone looked at me as I peered at my ex-wife. Hello, Anita. It sure is a surprise to see you. I raised my wine glass at her. Maybe we'll see each other on your travels about the ship. I'm in a suite, upper deck. Where are you? In Wes's bunk? Anita's face burst into tears as she bolted from the dining room. After a moment, the buzz of conversation returned as diners turned their attention away from our table. I signaled over the wine steward. Anyone else like some more to drink? I had intended to sleep in the next morning as my task was done. The docking at the little Haitian island was not until the afternoon. However, Zoe was tugging me out of bed at 7 a.m. Darren, get dressed quick. You need to come to the broadcast room. The captain is going to throw your ex-wife and that guy off the ship. I was instantly awake, pulling on my clothes. Zoe, what happened last night? Your ex-wife's guy got really drunk and nasty with the staff at the casino. Then he got into a fight with some guests and ship security. It gets worse, Darren. During the struggle, a bag of cocaine was found on him. I had to laugh. Wesley getting caught with drugs? This was the best gift ever. I dressed as fast as I could. We were soon in the broadcast room watching a feed from the conference center. One camera showed Captain Sven at a table flanked by the staff captain, hotel director, and several other members of the ship's staff. A wide-angle shot had Anita sitting in a chair off to the side. She looked like hell. Another camera followed Wesley as he paced the room. He was dressed in rumpled clothes, unshaven, and looked like he had slept in them. The tech handed me a pair of headsets. I adjusted the volume, listening in on the middle of Wesley's rant. I am not standing for any kangaroo court. I am a U.S. citizen and an attorney, so I know my rights. You cannot hold me against my will. I'll sue all you idiots. On this rust bucket, you'll be lucky to be captain of a bathtub toy boat when I get through with you. Captain Sven looked bored as some papers were passed in front of him. He looked down at the papers before addressing Wesley. This is a captain's massed hearing, not a court. You are correct. As a U.S. citizen, we cannot hold you against your will. In fact, we cannot hold any citizen of any country against their will. However, under Admiralty law, I am master of this vessel, responsible for the safety and welfare of all souls aboard my ship. I have viewed the footage and read the reports. You have attacked my staff and attempted to get into a physical altercation with other guests. I rule that you are a danger to both the ship and all aboard. There is only one sentence I am allowed to impose. You are both to be removed immediately from the Royal Viking. Wesley smacked his fist into his hand. Fine. Give us back our money. Then get us a plane off this pissant island. I will see you in an American court. Captain Sven stared sternly at Wesley. Under the Safety of Life at Sea Solace Convention, the Jones Act, and the Shipping Act of 1984, all of which your country is a signatory of, I am only responsible for setting you off in a port with adequate food, water, and living conditions. Anita spoke up. You cannot strand us on this island with those savages. Ma'am, this part of the island is a private resort on a long-term lease from the government of Haiti. We will set you off outside its gates with the remainder of your fare and personal belongings. How you arrange passage after that point is your discretion. Wesley became enraged. No way are you going to leave us with those third-world men. They'd love nothing better than to get their hands on me. He pointed to Anita. Do you have any idea what they'd do to a woman? Captain Sven looked at Wes, unmoved by the outburst. I resent the racist comments you are making toward our Haitian hosts. He held up a sealed evidence bag containing another bag with white powder. We have video evidence and sworn statements of this being in your possession. Our field test kit confirms this is a banned, controlled substance. Captain Sven passed the bag to the security chief before continuing. If you wish, I can alert the Haitian law enforcement authorities about your illegal possession of drugs. The police would arrange both transportation and accommodations for you and your wife. However, I do not feel it would be in your best interest. Do you understand? Wesley looked defeated. Anita started crying into her hands. Captain Sven nodded toward the chief of security. Please make arrangements to escort these two individuals and their belongings off the Royal Viking. I put down my headphones, giving Zoe a crooked smile. Pulling a pack of bubblegum out of my pocket, I tossed it to one of the techs. Hey guys, I said, think you can burn me a DVD copy of that? Between AJ and me, it wasn't clear who was more excited about Zoe coming to visit. We played tourist every day, going to the zoo, beach, seaquarium, and South Beach, just having a great time. My mom and brother's family loved Zoe, although my sister-in-law made Zoe promise not to teach AJ any more foreign curses, as AJ was promptly sharing new words with his cousins. The nights were even better than the days. I had never had a woman love me like that. It seemed like Zoe had just arrived when I walked into the bedroom to see her packing her bags. My God, Zoe, is it that time already? Zoe paused a moment, folding a blouse. Yes, Darren. The ship returns tomorrow. Damn, I said, leaning against the doorway. How did the time go by so quickly? Zoe gave me a sad smile, then patted the bed for me to sit next to her. I could tell something was on her mind. Darren, I have enjoyed these days with you and AJ, but now I must talk to you about us. Zoe took my hand. Darren, I will say what many women think but do not admit. She paused to take a breath. I wish to have 2 children. I know the risks of having a baby after age 34. Counting backward, this means I must have baby number 2 by age 33. 1 year between babies puts me at age 32, another year for having baby number 1. I'll be 31. Add another year for the wedding and getting together. So we reach age 30. I listened intently. Damn, Zoe, you plan your life like a math problem. Zoe gave a little smile. I am now 28, Darren. I don't lie to you like many others would do. I see you as a good father to our children and a good husband to me. But I will not lie to trap or trick you. I could tell Zoe was stressed as her English skills faltered when she was tense. As I started to speak, Zoe held up her hand. Darren, I go back to the Royal Viking tomorrow. The ship is leaving America to do the far Caribbean. I will not see you for these last 3 months of my contract. Please take the time to make your decision. If you do not want me, I understand, and we will always be friends. But I must look ahead in my life. We will talk no more of this. Zoe closed the suitcase, then left the room. It had been almost 3 months since I had last seen her. I missed her like crazy. Now I was on a 757 airplane heading east, flying over the Caribbean to meet Zoe on the Royal Viking. Mac was on board, needing a part. I had almost reached through the phone to kiss Mac when he asked if anyone could fly out. There was only 1 flight a week to Port Ingler. I had left straight from work, not even packing any bags, promising the cab driver all the cash in my wallet if he got me to the airport in time for the flight. I was seated by a window near the rear of the plane. The plane had about 150 passengers on it, so I was lucky to have an open seat between me and a young girl in the aisle seat. We were halfway into our 6-hour flight when the young girl tapped me on the shoulder. Hey, mister, how'd you get internet? She was staring at my laptop. Well, honey, I addressed the young girl. This is a test plane. Its wings contain phased arrays that can pick up internet via satellite, not cell phone towers like most aircraft. How come you got it and no one else does? My company is doing a trial test with this airline. I have a passcode with this memory stick to use the system. Damn, mister. I wish I had net access. I'm frigging bored. I pulled the USB stick out of my laptop. My name is Darren. We'll make a deal. You tell me your name and where you're going, then I'll let you use the internet for the rest of the flight. Deal, said the girl. My name is Katie with an E. I'm 16 years old and I'm going to meet my family on some cruise ship called the Royal Viking. Well, Katie with an E, it's nice to meet you. Is your family on board already? I motioned for her to give me her laptop. Katie was giggling at me. You can just call me Katie. But yeah, everyone is on board already. My dad is some big-shot political guy. They're filming a lame reality TV show about him. I didn't want to come, but Mom is making me. Says we gotta support Dad. It's so stupid. I handed Katie back her laptop. Your mom is right. Families should stick together. I think it's great you're helping out your dad. Katie was already logging into a Facebook page. Sure. Whatever. About an hour was left in the flight. I was staring at the GPS display on the plane's seatback screen when I got an idea. Katie, let me borrow your laptop. I'll show you something. After Katie handed me her laptop, I logged onto the Royal Viking webpage. I turned the screen to face Katie. See that? I pointed to the real-time GPS coordinates of the Royal Viking. If the plane's GPS is accurate, we should be passing over the Royal Viking in a few minutes. Heck, we might see the ship out the window if there are no clouds. Cool, Katie said. I nodded. If we had a parachute, we could jump out right on top of the ship. Right, Katie laughed. Suddenly, a huge bang rattled the aircraft. The plane started to shake violently. Darren, what's going on? Katie grabbed my hand. I'm scared. Me too, I thought. I was so terrified, but I tried to assure the young girl. Stay calm. I'm not sure what's happening, Katie. They should be making an announcement soon. The captain came over the speaker, and it was not to wish us a happy birthday. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid we have a major malfunction. Please listen to your flight attendants. We may need to make an emergency water landing. Just follow the flight attendant's instructions. I have sent out a distress signal, and the Coast Guard is on its way. The flight attendants looked ashen as they scurried down the aisle, trying to calm passengers. What's that mean, Darren? Katie's face was dead white. Katie, honey, the plane may need to make a big splash in the water. Looks like we are going for a little swim. I don't want to die. Katie started to cry. I took her chin in my hand. Look at me, Katie. You are going to be fine. You're with me and I'm too ugly to die." This brought a little giggle and a smile from Katie's tear-streaked face. It also gave me an idea as the plane started to shake worse, losing altitude. I swiped my credit card into the satellite phone on the seat back while searching for a phone number on my BlackBerry. I had to listen through greetings and menus, pressing a series of buttons, as an automated voice told me the cost of the call, making sure I acknowledged the charges. I could care less. They could bill my happy self. If I died in the crash, they could go fish trying to collect. I punched in a series of numbers. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, an authoritative voice I knew answered. "Bridge, this is Captain Sven." "Captain Sven, this is Darren." Captain Sven broke in. "Ah, Darren, good to hear from you. Max said you'll be joining us in port. Did you bring any more aquavit?" I could see the ocean getting closer to us through the window. "Captain Sven, listen, I don't have much time. I'm on an airplane about to crash land a few clicks from your current position." I rattled off the last coordinates I saw on the aircraft GPS screen. Captain Sven became all business. I heard him yell something to his staff. He then came back online. "You just stay dry, Darren. We will be there faster than a Valkyrie during a thunderstorm battle." Then the line went dead. I swore to myself, then put the useless headset back in its seat cradle. The flight attendants were still coaching everyone into position when the intercom squawked, "Brace for impact." When I was 16, my brother and I got into a really bad car accident that laid us both up for a week. That collision was like an angel's kiss compared to when we hit the water. I had the breath knocked out of me, seeing stars. My nose really hurt, and there was blood streaming down my shirt. "Damn it," I swore under my breath as I touched my face. "Broke my nose. Great." Katie looked unhurt, but she was shaking like a leaf. "What do we do, Darren?" Katie was on the edge of panic. I took a deep breath. The door behind us had blown open. Through the window, I saw the emergency evacuation slide pop out. I think they doubled as rafts. I ripped out my seat cushion, pulling out a yellow life vest, helping Katie into it. Passengers were already jumping out the door. I fitted myself with a life vest, pushing Katie in front of me as I urged her forward. I saw her crotch was stained. Katie turned to me, red-faced. "I'm sorry, Darren. I was so scared I peed on myself." I compelled her to keep moving. "No worries, Katie. We're all going to be wet in a few minutes anyway. No one will notice. Besides, I think we're all going to need a change of underwear after this." The crew was doing a great job getting everyone off. I helped some of the older passengers off, then saw no one was behind me. The water was almost knee-deep in the plane. I grabbed bottles of water from the galley, throwing them out the door. "Sir, what are you doing?" asked a frantic flight attendant manning the rear door. I kept tossing individual water bottles and cases of soda, juice, and milk into the ocean. "It's hot out there, honey. We can't drink seawater," I told the flight attendant. A man with pilot wings on his uniform yelled at us. "Get out! Everyone else has evacuated." He turned and jumped out the door. I motioned to the flight attendant. "Ladies first," I said, then pushed her out before jumping myself. An old pilot saying goes, "Any landing you can walk away from is a good one." I wondered if that applied to landings you swim away from. One of the plane's wings was torn off, but the body was still intact. Our pilot had done a fantastic job bringing the plane down in one piece. I saw 6 inflatable emergency slides. 5 were deployed and being used as rafts, although 2 were deflating. About 150 of us were floating around, with most on the slides and rafts, the rest bobbing in life jackets and holding on to seat cushions. I saw Katie and swam over to her. She looked terrified. "Hi, Katie," I said, trying to be brave. "Boy, are we lucky! Do you know how much people pay to go on deep-sea excursions?" Katie gave me a weak smile. She was hanging on to the side of an inflatable slide. I gave her a boost, pushing her into the slide raft to join a group of passengers. The sea around us was filled with floating seat cushions and debris. The water was calm, but the current was pulling everyone apart into small groups. The plane crew was trying to keep everyone together. About an hour went by. I swam around, gathering up bottles and cans from the wreck, handing them out to various groups of passengers. I tried to keep their spirits up by telling every bad cruise director and entertainer joke I could remember. Paddling up to the slide raft Katie was on, I tossed a bunch of cans of soda and juice into her lap. "Miss Katie, here is your order. That will be $6.85, not including tip," I joked. As others in the makeshift raft passed around the drinks, Katie gave me a strange look. "Darren, are we stranded out here? Are we going to die?" "Katie, I told you you're with me, and I am too ugly to die. The captain said the distress signal was sent out, so the Coast Guard should be here soon. But my money is on the Royal Viking." Katie seemed to ignore my answer, scanning the ocean. "Yeah, okay, but what about sharks?" I looked around. It was a hot day, and most people had removed their shirts to use as temporary sunshades. "Katie, don't worry. Sharks don't come out this far. Mostly they prefer colder water. Besides, since 1997, there have been fewer than 6 shark attacks in the Caribbean. Generally, sharks don't attack people. This isn't the movie Jaws." Of course, I had never seen a shark in my life until a few months ago at the Miami Seaquarium. All I knew about sharks was from watching the Discovery Channel during Shark Week. Then I heard a noise in the distance. I looked at the sky. It was clear with no clouds, so it couldn't be thunder. Katie shaded her eyes with her hand, peering out with her younger eyes. I saw her spot something. "It's a boat! It's a boat!" Katie screamed, jumping up on the slide raft and promptly falling overboard with a splash. Suddenly, everyone was pointing and shouting. Off in the distance, a white shape could be seen cresting the horizon. "That ain't no boat!" I yelled. "That's a ship! That's the Royal Viking!" A prettier sight I had never seen. As the Royal Viking steamed toward us, Captain Sven was putting on quite a show, blowing the ship's horn and shooting off flares. I don't know if it was happiness or the salt water, but I had tears in my eyes. Everyone was screaming and waving their arms as the Royal Viking approached. When the ship got about 200 yards away, she slowed and turned to show us her port side. Katie was frantic. "Why are they stopping? They're not going to leave us, are they?" I patted her shoulder. "Calm down, Katie, just watch." I knew what was coming. We stared in amazement as the Royal Viking performed a precise maneuver. Captain Sven came from a long line of professional Nordic seamen, stretching back to the Viking days. He took his duties seriously and tolerated no errors. I had seen Captain Sven personally oversee countless drills, making sure his crew knew their jobs backward and forward. Soon, large orange-topped boats manned by life-jacketed crew members were lowered and launched simultaneously. A dozen of these boats sped toward us in an arrowhead formation. I saw the familiar face of my boss, Mac, in the lead boat, standing next to a tall, white-haired man and a guy with a video camera. The ship's decks were crowded with cheering passengers and crew, all taking photos. The ship's tenders formed a ring around us and began picking up the wet but grateful plane passengers and crew from the water. Now that the waiting and tension were over, I started to enjoy myself swimming in the warm waters. I helped others onto the rescue crafts, moving from group to group. Soon, almost everyone was out of the water. As I approached the lead boat, I saw Mac staring down at me with his usual grin. "Darren, you daft worm, get in the goddamn boat," he yelled. I was about to grab his extended hand when I saw the white-haired man shouting and waving. I turned and saw Katie had drifted about 20 yards away. I let go of the ladder and swam toward Katie. "Darren, you bloody fool! Get back here!" I heard Mac shout behind me. I reached Katie, who was floating on her back. She turned to me with a pouty smile. "Mr. Darren, I want to stay and play in the pool some more." For someone who had been terrified an hour ago, Katie sure had changed moods. Typical teenager, I thought. "Come on, they're waiting for you," I said. Then I saw something that made my blood freeze. 2 dorsal fins were cutting through the water, heading straight for us. My heart started beating 1,000,000 times a minute. I tried to stay calm. "Katie, quick, get on my back and hold on tight," I said, ripping off her flimsy life jacket. "Why?" she asked. Then her eyes widened as she saw the fins. Everyone in the lifeboat started pointing and shouting. "Swim, you fool! Hurry!" Mac's voice rang out. I didn't need more motivation. I swam faster than I ever thought possible. Something large bumped against my abdomen, and I nearly lost control. We were almost there, just a few yards away. People on the boat were shouting encouragement, like it was the last leg of a relay race. I reached the side of the boat. Mac was hanging upside down from the ladder. He grabbed Katie off my back with one hand and flung her into the boat. I felt Mac's hand on mine when something bit into my left leg, pulling me under. I gasped for breath and swallowed seawater. The water around my leg turned red with blood. One of the sharks swam away with a chunk of my calf. Discovery Channel, I thought as the pain hit me. Then a surge of adrenaline pumped through my body. No way was I leaving my son fatherless. I kicked as hard as I could, the pain in my leg competing with the adrenaline rush. My efforts were enough to launch me out of the water. I broke the surface, grabbed onto the rope ladder, and just as I gripped the second rung, a massive weight latched onto my back and neck. It felt like being stabbed with 100 knives. The last thing I saw was Mac pointing a flare gun at me. "You ain't coming aboard my boat, you sorry maggot," he said and pulled the trigger. My world exploded into white noise. The rest was a blur. I felt Mac slapping my face. "Darren, stay with me, lad. You got to stay with me." There was a crowd of people around me. I was lying on my side against something rough, bobbing up and down. I felt seasick, among other things. "Your shooting sucks, Mac. You missed me, Mr. Big-Time Special Boat Service guy," I mumbled. Mac grinned. "That's it, Darren. Keep talking. I didn't miss you. I blew that shark off your back into the watery hell it came from." A wave of pain hit me, and I closed my eyes. I heard Katie's tearful voice. "Is he going to die? You can't let him die." I tried to speak, but my voice was a whisper. "Darren, what did you say?" Mac leaned closer. "I am too ugly to die," I managed to shout, trying to fight the pain. I heard laughter from the crowd before everything faded to black. An annoying beeping sound was off to my left as I tried to open my eyes. The damn beeping was grating on my nerves, along with an irritating itch on my left leg. I wanted to move my arm, but found it attached to a bunch of tubes. Focusing, I saw I was in a hospital with Zoe sleeping in a chair to my right. "Oh, I see our special guest is finally awake." I turned my head as a nurse walked in carrying a bag. She went to the window and flung open the curtains, flooding the room with light. "How did I get here?" I croaked in a hoarse voice. The nurse adjusted a monitor before answering. "When a senior member of Congress throws his weight around, things happen." Zoe jumped out of the chair when she heard my voice, wrapping her arms around me and burying her head in my neck. "Darren, I was so worried. We almost lost you a couple of times. You lost so much blood, and the shark bites on your back turned septic. You weren't responding well to the antibiotics. They had you on life support and induced a coma to let you heal. You've been out almost 3 weeks. Darren, if you hadn't made it, I don't know what I would have done." "Yes, Zoe, me too," I joked, feeling her tears on my neck. I tried to hug her back, but the network of tubes in my arms felt like a spider web. Despite everything, I was feeling pretty good, probably because I was drugged up to my eyeballs. "Zoe, where am I? How did I get here?" "Darren, you're in one of the best hospitals in Washington, D.C., the same one the President and Congress use. The girl you saved, Katie, visited you here often. Her dad is a big shot in the government. He got the Navy to send a special plane for you," Zoe explained. "They weren't going to let me on the flight, but I told them they'd need the whole Army and Marines to make me leave your side." Zoe then pulled out her laptop and pressed a few keys. She put the computer on my lap and turned the screen toward me. "Darren, you know you're now a star." I watched in fascination as the saga played out on the screen. The reality TV show crew following the congressman had recorded the whole thing. The episode was titled, "Too Ugly to Die." Thanks to editing, I was portrayed as a mix of Rambo, John Wayne, and Superman. If the show was to be believed, I was responsible for the plane's safe landing, rescuing all the passengers, saving the little girl, and single-handedly fighting off a school of giant sharks. They even included a colorful recreation of my pirate adventure. As the screen went blank, I turned toward Zoe. "What? No footage of me saving handicapped kittens with asthma from trees?" Zoe laughed and clicked a few more keys, showing clips of people wearing t-shirts that had a shark and an old-fashioned pirate character with a circle and red line through them. Bold letters above and below proclaimed, "Too ugly to die." I shook my head, but Zoe clapped her hands. "Darren, it's gone viral. A man came to ask if he could make t-shirts, mugs, stickers, and other stuff. He said we could get some money for it, and I agreed." "You don't mind, right?" Zoe looked at me for approval. I waved my hand. "Zoe, if you can make some money off this foolishness, go ahead. God bless you." Zoe gave me a big hug and kiss. We didn't make a fortune off the too ugly to die stuff, but the money came in handy. With the housing market downturn, my brother and I found we could buy a lot of house for our money. Me with my recent windfall, and he and his wife with the money from their previous home sale up north. The realtor the company provided found 2 large houses in a great neighborhood side by side. The contractor had completely renovated these old mansions. They both had 2-car garages, modern air conditioning, new appliances, and even solar panels. The places were expected to fetch almost $1 million each in the old days, but now in default, they were bank-owned. The bank couldn't complete the paperwork fast enough when we offered them less than a quarter of that in cash. My rehab was a pain, made worse by having all the medical people around. My brother, his wife, and Zoe never cut me a break on my exercises. Yes, Zoe was living with us now. Our grateful congressman had tacked Zoe's citizenship onto some bill. We even got to go to the bill signing. He had his staff make a few phone calls, and like magic, Zoe got the medical school transcripts from her old country. It is good to have friends in high places. Zoe had one really odd quirk. She loved to clean the house. Zoe said she appreciated house chores as they gave her instant gratification. All those years aboard ships or living in hotels with room service had made her miss the simple task of basic cleaning. Some say what I lack in intelligence I make up for in stubbornness, but no one ever said I was a fool. If Zoe found happiness in doing the dishes, vacuuming, laundry, and dusting, who was I to deny her that joy? I was more than happy to encourage it. Today, I had a rare day off. No ships were in port, Mac was at a conference, and there was nothing at the office that needed my attention. Zoe was dressed in her cleaning battle gear. Scuffed jeans, sandals, a scarf tied around her head, and an apron with pockets full of solvents and wipes. She gripped a dust mop in her hand. I heard the doorbell ring and was surprised when Zoe entered the room, followed by my ex-wife, Anita.
"Darren, someone is here to see you,"
Zoe began. Anita stepped in front of her.
"It's okay, dear. I don't need a housekeeper to announce me to my husband of over a decade."
Anita walked toward me with her arms extended for a hug. I jumped from my chair, stumbling over the coffee table in an attempt to escape. "Anita, I am your ex-husband, remember? What are you doing here?" The smile vanished from Anita's face as she dropped onto the couch.
"Darren, it's been...
She paused to compose herself.
Can you have your housekeeper get me a cup of coffee, please? I've been on a bus for 3 days. It was brutal."
I was about to tell her that Zoe was not a maid when Zoe spoke up.
"Of course, madam. Would you like cream and sugar? Perhaps a pastry?"
I noticed Zoe laying on the accent really thick. Anita never noticed.
"Oh, would you, dear? That would be fine."
"Cream and sugar, please." I studied Anita sitting there. She looked terrible, aged beyond her years, as if she had been through a lot. She had lost weight, and her rumpled clothes just hung off her frame. Anita had always taken great pride in her appearance. Now she had no makeup on, and her once shiny blonde hair was dull and streaked with gray. Zoe returned with a tray containing coffee and some small cookies. Anita attacked them ravenously before turning towards Zoe.
"Thank you so much, dear. Can you please leave us alone for a few minutes? I am sure you have work to do."
I started to object, but Zoe just answered,
"You are welcome, madam. Excuse me?"
Her accent was so heavy I barely understood her. I saw a mischievous twinkle in her eye. Zoe left the room but lingered by the kitchen door within earshot. Anita bit into a cookie, brushing the crumbs off her knee before speaking.
"Wes and I are no longer together, Darren." I couldn't resist. "I thought his name was Wesley. In fact, you made it quite clear he was to be called Wesley. What happened? Did you cheat on him to meet someone with more frequent flyer miles and airport executive club privileges?"
Anita looked down at her feet, her shoes worn.
"I guess I deserve that. But no, that creep left me for a younger bimbo. I never saw it coming. I found out from that woman's husband. He just showed up one day at the house with pictures and everything."
"Serves you right," I said, not bothering to hide my smile.
"Don't look so smug, Darren. I can appreciate the irony."
Anita took another sip of her coffee.
"You take up with a serial cheater, force him into a marriage, expecting to travel the globe, then live happily ever after. Gee, what could possibly go wrong?" I finally sat in the chair. "It's called karma. Sweet payback indeed. Please wipe that smile off your face, Darren. It's not like you to gloat. That dumb bleach blonde doesn't know what she's in for. The housing crash wiped us out. She's not going to get anything. Both Wes and she are going to be living in that trailer park, broke and dodging bill collectors for a long time. Anita scanned the room, looking around at all the photos on the wall, some of me in different countries. Zoe had really made our house into a home. Darren, when did you start to travel so much? Anita's gaze stopped on one picture. She got up to take a closer look. Darren, is that you with the President of the United States? Yeah. He happens to know me. I tried to sound as casual as possible about my second favorite picture. Really nice guy. That picture was taken in the White House Rose Garden after a bill signing. He is a lot taller than on TV. He even signed AJ's souvenirs. We got a tour of Air Force One. Anita's mouth was open. Surely you are joking. These pictures must be photoshopped. Again, I couldn't resist. I am not joking, and don't call me Shirley. Anita made no response, still staring at the picture. Damn, didn't anyone see the airplane movies? Anita, the pictures are real. They were taken by the official White House photographer. You can see the emblem in the right-hand corner of the picture. It was after spending the night in the Lincoln bedroom. Fun fact. Did you know Lincoln never slept there? It was really just an office. Anita kept staring at the picture. Why are you and the president holding up that t-shirt that reads "Too ugly to die"? It's a long story. You might not be interested. She slowly turned toward me. My God, Darren, why didn't you do all this when we were together? I just shrugged. Maybe I would have if you hadn't run off to be with your boss in some cheap hotel. You didn't stick around long enough to give us a chance. She straightened up, looking me right in the eye. Well, that's going to change, Darren. I thought we could let the past be water under the bridge. We have both changed, but we are still connected. Connected? You and me? Right, Anita. If you shovel that BS any deeper, I'll need to put on boots. Darren, I'm serious and truly sorry for my past actions, but I'm not holding a grudge that you cheated me out of my money, so... I interrupted. If I were you, I'd choose my words more carefully when talking about cheating. After running around during our marriage, stabbing me in the back and ignoring your son, you expected money? What is that, bounty after the mutiny? Darren, I can't say I'm sorry enough times. I'm here to ask you for another chance, an opportunity for us to be a family like we once were. Anita saw the look on my face. Please, Darren, let me speak before you say anything. I know it will be hard for you to get over my recent behavior, but you can trust me now if you give me the chance to prove it. We were good together in the past. We went through a lot by each other's side. It will take a lot of work, but we are both wiser now. I know we can do it. I stood up from my chair. The thing is, Anita, knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting tomatoes in a fruit salad. Why would I want to put myself through all that hassle to be with you? If Wes hadn't screwed around on you, would you still be here trying to get back together? Anita folded her hands in her lap before answering. Wes and I were over long before that bimbo's husband showed up. I suspected Wes was just cheating on me too much. I couldn't suppress a laugh. Cheating too much? Anita, is there an acceptable number? Did you and Wes sit down to work out a mathematical formula? Anita was crestfallen. No, Darren, it wasn't like that. I just thought Wes had gotten it out of his system, that the travel would bring us closer together. It was a big mistake. Deep down, I knew I had made a huge blunder the day I walked out the door when you confronted me with those hotel locks. Didn't sound like it back then. You claimed to be planning some exit strategy, scheming to dump me and AJ in advance. Darren, I was a naive idiot who was sucked in by the bunch of slick lines Wes fed me. Anita looked at her hands. Wes told me we would journey the world with no worries, just a voyage for myself, a grand escapade. Like a complete moron, I swallowed the whole thing. I let out a snort. Oh my, you were Little Red Riding Hood, tricked by the big bad wolf. As for swallowing, his words weren't the only thing you swallowed. There was a moment of silence as neither of us spoke. Then I softened for a second. Why didn't you come back then, Anita? I loved you so much. You were my whole world. I was so hurt, but we could have worked it out. Anita let out a sigh. My God, so many times I wanted to just come back. I practiced this speech 1,000 times as well as on the bus ride down here. Now it just seems so hollow. I can't apologize enough. All I can say is I was a fool, plain and simple. There was no excuse for my behavior. I knew you were a homebody, not real adventurous, a solid, steady guy.
Wes was a man of action. He wasn't what? I asked. Damn it, Darren, I don't know. I guess he wasn't afraid. He made things happen. He was so different from you. Anita was fidgeting in her seat. Anita, if this is your idea of an apology, you really suck at it. Darren, I promised myself I would never lie to you ever again, so I'm not going to do it now. My actions, behavior, and thinking were all wrong. What I did to you and AJ was monumentally stupid, both then and now. At that time, I thought it was my only chance to see the world without being tied down. It was just one big mess of my own making, which I realized too late. Yet I had too much pride to come crawling back. In the back of my mind, I thought you would still be waiting for me, keeping the home fires burning, that kind of thing. It's terrible to admit, but you were unconsciously probably my fallback plan all along. The man I knew I would return to one day. Your love for me, that stable anchor, would be strong enough to accept me even after everything. Anita looked up at me, tears starting to rim her eyes. I wasn't completely wrong, Darren. You are still here, all alone in this big house. I've come back to do whatever you want or ask. Anything, if it will get us back together. Can't we at least try? That ship has sailed, Anita, I replied. She didn't give up. Please, Darren, can't you give me a chance? I know about the dates your brother tried to set up for you. They were disasters, weren't they? She took my silence as agreement. Look around, Darren. I might be slightly damaged goods now, but I am a known quantity as a single mother. Do you really think you can find someone who will love you and AJ as much as I do? I had my reality check. You know, for better or worse, I am the best bet you have. Slightly damaged goods? Best bet I have? You think I can't replace you? I motioned toward the kitchen. Zoe, can you come here? Anita, confused, watched as Zoe walked over and took my hand. Anita, I don't need to bet. I have a sure thing right here. Anita was stunned. You're dating the maid? You would choose her over me? No, Anita, I'm not dating the maid. I'm engaged to her. She's no ordinary maid. She's a doctor who speaks 7 languages. But Darren, I was your wife for 12 years, the mother of your child. Anita stood up, looking shocked. My God, Darren! She looks like she just got off the boat. She barely speaks English. Zoe had a mischievous twinkle in her eye. She reached out, shaking Anita's hand with a firm grip. In almost perfect English, with just a hint of an upper-class British accent, Zoe said, Hello, Anita. In fact, I did just get off the boat. You recall the ship Royal Viking, don't you? Anita's eyes widened as Zoe continued. Welcome to our home. AJ is a fine boy. I do so much enjoy spending time with him and Darren. Anita was speechless. Then she noticed my favorite picture hanging above the mantel. It was of Zoe and me on the Royal Viking, her in a stunning evening gown and me in a tux. Anita put the pieces together. You, she sputtered, pointing at Zoe. You're the woman from the cruise ship, the one sitting at the captain's table with Darren that night. Guilty as charged, Zoe said with a smile. Do you wish to stay to visit with AJ, or do you need to be going? Just then, AJ came running into the house, slamming the door. He was holding his skateboard, wearing an oversized, too ugly to die t-shirt with earphones around his neck. We could hear him talking loudly before he even reached the room. Hey, Dad! Whose beat-up crummy suitcases are sitting by the door? He rounded the corner and stopped dead in his tracks at seeing Anita. AJ muttered a curse in either Finnish or Norwegian. Zoe broke the silence. AJ, your mother traveled 3 days on a bus to come see you. AJ responded with a tone only teenagers can manage. A bus? What happened, Mom? Your broom break down? Watch it! Zoe and I said in unison. AJ looked around the room. Where's that old troll, Mom? You know, your other hubby? Anita, still a little stunned by everything, said, Son, that man Wesley and I are no longer together. AJ digested that for a second. You cheated on him too. Is that why you came to Florida, going to cruise the senior citizen centers trying for another husband? There should be lots of candidates for you up at Century Village Retirement Home. AJ, stop that right now, I ordered, though I was secretly enjoying it. AJ was on a roll. Mom, my friend Raul's great-grandfather still lives with them. You might go for Papa Jose. He's just your type. I mean, he's really, really old, like almost 100. I strode toward AJ, but he kept talking. You know, Mom, Papa Jose is in a wheelchair and stuff. But with all the new pills and junk plus your help, he might still be able to get it up. Want to see if I can set you two up? Anita fell onto the couch, breaking down into tears. I grabbed AJ's arm, yanking him out of the room into the kitchen. AJ, what has gotten into you? You have no right to talk to your mother that way. AJ was defiant. Come on, Dad. We both know Mom is a traitor to this family. She ran away from us faster than a rapper from a drug test. AJ, that is not true at all. AJ spouted off a German curse word before continuing in English. Dad, you can't tell me that Mom didn't jump into bed at the first good offer and leave us hanging? He saw the look on my face. It's okay, Dad. I heard Uncle talking to Auntie about it one night. I don't want anything to do with that turncoat deserter. I won't give her another chance to betray us. I took a deep breath before speaking. AJ, listen. I'm not defending your mom's actions, but let's try to be civil. Think back to when you were little and sick in the hospital. Who was always by your side? Mom. Who took care of you when you came home? Mom. Who taught you when you couldn't go to school anymore? Mom. After all those years of what she did for you, don't you have a little room in your heart for her? I could see he was weakening, but still struggling with his anger. But Dad, how do we know she's not going to bail on us again? I trust her about as much as a crack addict around an 8-ball. AJ, you're old enough now to know that none of us are perfect. You might find you get along better with your mother now that you can see her as a person. Remember what the chaplain on the Royal Viking said, hate the sin, love the sinner. Dad, just because Mom goes to church doesn't make her a good person. If I stand in the garage, it doesn't make me a car. AJ's words said one thing, but his body language showed he was conflicted. Son, just for me, go into that room, talk with your mother, listen with an open mind to what she has to say. Can you do that? It's all I ask. AJ shuffled his feet a few times. Okay, Dad, I'll do it. But only because you asked me. As AJ spent time with Anita alone, Zoe cornered me in the kitchen. Darren, your old wife is, how you say, in deep trouble? I peeked around the corner. Anita was still talking with AJ. I turned back to Zoe. What did Anita say? Darren, her whole company fell apart during the housing problem. Everyone lost money. Anita let her old husband handle the divorce because neither had money for lawyers. According to the divorce laws, both parties share debt and assets when they part ways. I shrugged. It will be a hassle for Anita, but not that big a deal. She can declare bankruptcy like a lot of people are doing now. Zoe shook her head. I don't think so, Darren. Anita and her old husband signed for a lot of mortgages that can't be discharged. Plus, the taxman says she owes a lot of money. I winced. If you owe the IRS in America, you're in trouble. That's one debt you can't escape, Darren. Zoe continued. There's a bigger problem. She has no money, nowhere to stay. Anita didn't have much of a plan beyond trying to get back together with you. I looked around the kitchen. Well, the house is pretty big. We do have some extra rooms. Zoe started swearing in some language while I tried not to laugh. I finally let the smile break across my face, putting my hands up in surrender. Zoe, relax. I'm just kidding. We'll find a hotel or someplace for Anita. Spot her a few bucks. Zoe calmed down and pulled out her cell phone. I know just the place, Darren. A lot of the crew stay there between contracts. It has long-term furnished rentals with kitchens. Plus, it's near the bus stop. The rates are very reasonable. Best of all, it's not here. Anita couldn't find any job, let alone one that would support her, especially if the IRS was garnishing her wages. Zoe used her contacts to get Anita hired on a ship. It was a rust bucket doing 2- and 3-night loops to the Bahamas, basically booze cruises. The job cleaning cabins was hard, with long hours and low pay. However, it was a steady job with room, board, and tips. The contract was 10 months on and 8 weeks off. While I think Zoe would have been happier if Anita worked on a ship in the Antarctic, over time, my son and his mother came to an understanding. Although I never saw them have the relationship Zoe and AJ shared, all parties got along. After her third contract, Anita moved up to a low-level management position on her ship. My wife is now one of the most respected anesthesiologists at the hospital. AJ is looking into applying to the Naval Academy, and having a congressman to secure an appointment helps. My 2 new sons are a rowdy bunch and talk in several languages. They are a spitting image of their mother, thank God. Thanks for listening to one Infidelity hit. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop us a like.